Today is Monday, June 2nd, 2025. We are here at 5 o'clock having a workshop with our town attorney on the extension of TIF 1, as well as other exciting TIF-related questions and discussions and all of the good stuff. And Bailey Douglas has Girl Scout cookies up here if anyone would like one. Not that she is going to share, but you can beg.
No.
Alyssa, do you want to kind of come, or maybe do you need to be at a podium? Do you have a mic?
I can use this one, or
Would it make
whatever you'd like.
Yeah. What did you want to kind of jump in, or would it make sense to kind of give kind of a short, holistic overview, and then I know there are some council questions that sort of had been disseminated ahead of time. We could address those as well. What do folks want to do?
I think we let Alyssa start maybe with
Alyssa?
with the application process, where you're at. Sure.
Let's get in there.
Yeah, I'm happy to do a quick over. And is this okay, or would you prefer that I go to the podium? Is this fine?
If they're good, we're good.
All right, great. I'll do a quick recap of TIF 1 generally, because it's been a few months since we last met on this. So TIF District 1 was originally adopted in 1996 and has been extended, or in other words, amended 3 times to date for a maximum of the total 30-year term. So it is coming up on expiration next year. And as you all know, there's a ability under Maine law now to extend a TIF district for an additional 20 years during a 10-year window that started last year, provided that you utilize the TIF revenue, 75% of the TIF revenue, for affordable housing or transit. At this point, it's or until we have clarification from the legislature. The original purpose of TIF 1 was more narrowly focused on development projects on Route 1, specifically Norton and Planet Dog, and credit enhancement agreements that were offered there. And the TIF revenue was initially dedicated towards the development of that commercial business park and the infrastructure related to that. It has since, as well as some of the Twinbrook development, it's since removed a significant portion of Twinbrook. It's now really limited to that Route 1 area. But it remains somewhat limited in terms of the use of TIF revenue historically, and I'll let the town manager speak to this a little bit more as well, but historically, the project costs have gone towards things like sewers, roads, sidewalk improvements on Route 1, other infrastructure related to just the general, development of that. But it really has, and some economic development activities, master plans, those types of things, water line extensions, traffic signals, and administrative costs that the town has incurred in connection with either the administration of those projects or management of those projects or staff time related to economic development. And there are a number of other authorized uses under the statute today that didn't exist when the TIF statute was originally adopted. And the district really hasn't expanded those over the last 30 years, so it still remains pretty specific to that Route 1 development area, although there are now a lot of other options. The district currently has an increased assessed value, which is what we know as our captured value, property value, taxable value within the district, of just over $43 million. A lot of that development, a lot of that value is derived from the Rockwood condos developments. Those are part of the district, as well as the commercial businesses that are along that section of the Route 1 corridor. There are, let's look at my parcel list here. There are, let's see, 8 parcels total. It's currently a total of 83 acres. When this district was designated in 97, it was all one parcel, and the original assessed value of that one parcel was $317,000. So as you can see, the difference between that $317,000 and the now $43 million is a significant amount of retained value in that district. I mean, and that is really the key to this conversation in terms of what the benefit or the impact of a TIF district could be. The two of the parcels are Rockwood parcels. Those comprise about 35 million of that. of the 43 million. So again, it's significant, and even those aren't specifically commercial development. They're eligible to be retained in a TIF district, that value. The rest of the value comes from businesses that are right along the Route 1 corridor. Dr. Green, Lucinda's, The Mooring, Toddle Inn, those are all other properties within TIF 1. So that's kind of the just sort of the landscape or the overview of what TIF District 1 looks like. It obviously was the town's first district, so it's the first set to expire and the first that we've considered for this potential extension option at this point. And in thinking about the extension, the things we've discussed to date are, one, the value that you're capturing currently, that $43 million that's being captured. What that means is that the tax revenue from that $43 million minus the $317,000 is currently all sheltered to be used for eligible project costs. And as I said earlier, the project costs are a little bit limited as TIF 1 was originally adopted. So this is an opportunity for the town to look at the uses of that TIF revenue and identify, one, whether you'd like to continue capturing it as TIF revenue, two, how you'd like to use it as TIF revenue, and three, whether you'd like to expand it for eligible uses that exist today that didn't exist when you first adopted this district. And that includes things like, and you'll see in Exhibit J of the materials that we put together, and I'll talk about those in just a second, but you'll see the list of potential public project costs that we could assign uses of the TIF revenue to. There are capital costs in the district. There's a lot of infrastructure things like roads, utilities. There are capital costs outside of the district if it's made necessary by or related to, which obviously the Route 1 corridor has a significant connection to other commercial development there. Professional services, staff time, administrative work of the town in connection with economic development, public safety improvements that are made necessary by commercial development in the district, environmental improvements, and then lastly, the big one for the extension, of course, is the transit and affordable housing. So the requirement for the extension, as we talked about at a prior workshop, is that 75% of the TIF revenue, captured TIF revenue, would be used for one of these projects and potentially both, depending on what the legislature does this session with that bill, to be determined by the town. So you can continue capturing 100% of that 43 million, and 75% of the tax revenue of that 43 million would have to go towards one of these projects. You could also capture less than 100%. This application would give the council the discretion to make that election each fiscal year, depending on budgetary needs and other sort of spending priorities. And then, the benefit of sheltering the value is what we refer to as the tax shifts. So the two materials or two charts that are in the materials, the application materials that really highlight this, and we can certainly talk about them in detail, but I'll just point them out for right now, are Exhibit E and Exhibit F. So Exhibit E shows the breakdown of kind of what I just covered in terms of the $317,000 original assessed value, the $43 million of increased assessed value, what the tax revenue looks like on each of those numbers, and then also what 75% of that would need to be allocated towards these projects. So that's just the revenue side of the district. Exhibit F shows you the impact of sheltering. This is where we outline the tax shifts, and there are really three primary components of tax shifts in a TIF district: education, revenue sharing, and county taxes. When you shelter that $43 million from the town's total valuation, it avoids a decrease in your state aid to education and your state revenue sharing. So it's not necessarily that doing this is going to cost the town this much more, it's that you're avoiding the loss of that revenue. And in addition to that, it also avoids an increase to county taxes, because all three of those formulas are based on the town's total valuation. And when you don't shelter $43 million in a TIF district, that gets added to the town's total valuation, and that number is used to calculate each of these cost sharing factors. So this is a sort of basic snapshot of what the net impact of those three things looks like in comparison to the revenue that you would get from sheltering that $43 million. So that's really the discussion for tonight, and the materials have been put together. And I'll just talk quickly about process. The materials, this is the application that would go to the state of Maine to authorize the extension. The process under the statute is that you as a council prepare these materials, or I do that at your direction. We hold a public hearing on it, which is set for tonight. That's been noticed according to the statute. If you were to move forward with this tonight, with the application tonight, we would submit it to DECD for review and approval, and then that would authorize the amendment and the extension of this TIF district. So we are at the point now tonight of, sort of considering what you want to be in the final application and what is ultimately subject to discussion at the public hearing. So that's where we are, and I'm happy to answer any questions, or if I've missed anything, please jump in.
I had one question. So we are also going into a revaluation. So could you talk for a moment about the impact of revaluation if we retain this district and the impact of revaluation if we do not extend TIF 1 or extend it? Yeah.
Sure. It isn't necessarily a significant impact because in the revaluation, the property values are likely to go up, but the mill rate's likely to go down. So I wouldn't say that it's a wash, but it's not going to be so significantly, one side or the other that that the revenue that you're capturing in the district significantly decreases or significantly increases.
Okay.
It's going to stay fairly level. It may go up a bit or down a bit depending on the net impact of those properties. But because the mill rate is going to go down when the values go up, the ultimate resulting tax revenue is going to be largely the same. The projections that we've done account for that in 2027. What it shows is, but what it does is it only accounts for it in one direction because we can't really guess at what the new value is going to be.
Okay.
So what this does is actually keep the increased assessed value as of today's value, which is 43 million. The mill rate today is 2460. In year one of the new extension term, we've dropped it down to 15, the mill rate down to 15 to account for the revaluation. But what will happen is that the value will also change. We just didn't attempt to predict that. So if anything, what you would see on a chart like this is an increase in tax revenue on the increased assessed value because the increased assessed value is likely to go up in the revaluation where we've accounted for the mill rate going down. But, again, it's hard to predict what, by what percentage that would happen. So we've just kept that flat for purposes of these projections.
Thank you.
So with that increased assessed value, we'd also be looking at an increase in the amount of aid, the state aid, county taxes, and all those other numbers. Those would also rise as well, right?
So the total townwide revaluation, your county taxes are going to go up because your valuation is going to be higher. Your revenue sharing is likely to go down. If your total town valuation increases, your revenue sharing is going to go down. Your state aid to education is going to go down.
It's nuanced.
Yeah, it is.
Sorry, because those are driven by state valuation. Your local valuation is determined by the tax assessor here. So they use the state valuation for the education funding and revenue sharing. So that may go up if the state, by their review of sales, decides that the town, like this past year, went up by 5%, for instance, in its state valuation. That's the number that's going to be in play. So if we go up by 50, let's say the assessment goes up by 50% here locally, it doesn't have an impact on the state numbers, because those are all driven by the Maine Revenue Services does that assessed value. Now, what the local assessment will do is it'll close that gap, and it'll, right now it's maybe running at about half of what the state has the town assessed at, and then that's why that drives our local mill rate and our local value, because that's everything that's been determined by Clint here as the assessor. So what you may find, to what Alyssa was saying, your net tax revenue from that district may go up a little bit, or go down a little bit, or stay about the same, much as any other property would with a reval, just because it's a function of if they're underassessed in comparison to the overall market is where you might see if they were underassessed, there may be a little bit more revenue, but if they were over, then it may be a little bit less. My guess is they're probably close to close to parity with a lot of properties.
Not to oversimplify it a lot, but I think the only real number you can use is a 3% increase in value or in taxes, because it's all based on your spending. And so if you project in 10 years, 3%, that's a 30% increase in 10 years. And I think that's the real number you have to work with, because valuation and mill rate really don't have anything to do with spending. So, I mean, your school budget, we hold our budget at 1.7 or whatever, 2% a year, but the combined impact is about, in general, 3% a year. So if you use that 30% for 10 years, that I think is the number you should work with. Am I oversimplifying that?
It's not bad, Councilor Vale. Throw into the mix the growth also that you pick up locally that offsets it, as the town grows in value annually. So it may not be 30%, but it might be half of that, depending upon what you pick up for value. 3% per year over 10 years is a 30% gross, but if it's offset by, if you pick up, X amount or 1.5%, 2% in new value annually, that offsets it as well. So, but generally,
If I look at my tax bill, I can see that 30%.
It's a pretty reasonable rule.
Yeah,
pretty
it's
reasonable
probably
rule.
more than that, but
Could be.
Ron?
Just a question, Alyssa. Because of us sheltering this money in our TIF district, doesn't the school district receive way more money than the local surrounding towns around us for state aid for school funding? I mean, I thought Bill Shane said something about like Falmouth and Yarmouth, we receive way more money than they do.
Yeah, I mean, it's, as Matt said, it's nuanced. I hate to oversimplify the school funding formula of this because, and I will say about these projections, this is a simplified snapshot for purposes of an application to project what this looks like. It's not a full economic analysis of the impact of development, and it doesn't take into account spending. It's really just looking at tax revenue from new value. And it's assuming that all other things being equal, the impacts of state aid to education and revenue sharing applied to this specific value today, are what they are. So there are a lot of other variables to it, and I always like to tell people it's not a perfect formula. There are a lot of different ways to look at this, but for purposes of what we're asked to do for DECD, this is what we look at. From the state aid to education perspective, the way that we look at the shift for purposes of this application is we look at the value that you're capturing, so the 43 million in this case, and we look at your most recent ED 279, which the state publishes, and that's gives the breakdown of your school funding formula and how that is calculated by the state. It applies a mill rate to value in the town. It adjusts it for certain, for certain things like whether it's a per pupil count or population count, whether you're part of a district, et cetera. So each district or each municipality comes out with a calculated mill rate. We take that calculated mill rate and apply it to this value. It's a very simplistic formula just in terms of saying if you had this much more value that you were local town value that you were reporting to the state for purposes of this, they would apply that mill rate and say this is your expected contribution to education locally, which means we the state are not picking that up. So that's why I say it's sort of an avoided loss calculation. We look at if we the town of Cumberland were responsible because we had this extra value at this current mill rate, this is what we'd be contributing to education and what we would not be receiving from the state as a result of it. So to your question about what, how that impacts other municipalities or what that looks like, yes, but the caveat to that is other municipalities also have TIF districts. So it's a bit of a balancing out. To the extent that other communities don't have districts and aren't sheltering value, then all of their value is being factored into the calculation for that formula. If they do, they have sort of a similar offset. They're sheltering some of that value, but it really just depends on how much they might be sheltering. But there, certainly are a lot of communities in the state that have TIF districts. So it's, I don't want to say it's kind of a apples to apples comparison, one community to another, but they all have kind of the same opportunity to address the impact with new value through TIF districts.
Mr. Vail?
Two questions. If the council moves ahead with the extension for 10 years, can we use that money to fund let's say the town wants to fund a housing project or a transportation project, can we fund a loan or a bond?
So yes, either ones, and they could be different. So one of the options for the council in this application is to authorize the town to issue bonds for a project that would otherwise be eligible for tax exempt bonds. So it would have to be a public project. I mean, it would meet the same criteria as something you'd issue bonds for today. And you have the ability to say yes or no to that as a council. When you designate this program, you authorize yourselves to do that or not do that. In terms of loans, the other option is as an eligible use of TIF revenue, you can also authorize TIF revenue to make loans under either like revolving economic development programs. One of the things that is in process right now or being considered by the legislature now is more specifically programs to assist with affordable housing, like down payment assistant types programs through TIF districts. Again, it hasn't gone through yet, so I don't know whether it will be approved this session, but there are other communities who are looking to do that, and the statute just doesn't specifically address that right now. It has a very general reference to revolving loan programs, but they were originally intended to be more towards economic development, and that's how they've been used historically. So I anticipate that will happen, and this would give you the ability to, if the legislature passes that, to utilize TIF revenues for those types of projects. So there could be a loan to a developer of a project, or it could actually be a town bond if it's truly a public project or has some element of it that would otherwise qualify for public funding.
My second question is a future council could look at this revenue and say, we're not using it, we want to turn it over back into the general fund. Can we limit that over a year-to-year basis? And then if we have a project, take that money back out? Or is there flexibility with the council?
Yes. So the way it's currently drafted is that the council has the discretion to set what we call the capture rate each year. So what the council would do in the course of establishing the budget is say, we're going to continue to capture 100% of all of the value and all of the corresponding revenue, or we're going to ratchet that down in any given year, and you can also go back up with it. So that would be a year-to-year decision at the council's discretion.
Flexibility is there.
So what, okay, sorry, this might be kind of stream of consciousness, but how does it work? Say we want to look at extending water, right? We have a real water problem in West Cumberland. And say we want to invest in some serious water infrastructure, and say, how does it work geographically to like constitute something that could count towards affordable housing, i.e. we're putting in the water so a developer could build something, right? Not necessarily town sponsored, but, and then at the same time, we're also, I think water comes as part of economic development, right? As under our normal TIF, not tied to affordable housing or transit. So is there like math or percentages that kind of go into some of those larger plans, and how does that all work? And also, how would we have to be thinking about that kind of long term, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you look at this Exhibit J, just as sort of the backdrop to your question, right now you'll see a bunch of, a table with a bunch of categories of descriptions for potential projects and a blank box with a dollar sign. And then a statutory reference. That table lays out the categories of possible uses and the authority of the statute to use them. What we will need to do when we submit this to DECD is, and typically I do this by percentage because it's a percentage of what we anticipate the revenue to be, so we'll derive dollar figures from that, but really look at how do we want, from today's point of view, how do we want to target the use of revenue? So if this is an extension, we know that 75% of that's going to go to affordable housing or transit, but we're going to allocate the rest of it towards other projects. Those numbers go in for purposes of the application for DECD to understand the town's intent and what your goals are for this program, but they are not set in stone. So it's not like you put in $5 million for a certain project and you are, have to spend it all or are limited to that. That's flexible over time, and the town gets to make that decision as you go along year to year. But it's a good planning exercise to do now, to your question in terms of how you kind of think through what you want to do with this. and also on an ongoing basis, there are different categories that cover all of the things that you just talked about. And so a lot of times what we do is prorate that, as it happens. So the first thing we do is say, is it in the development program? Because as you may remember, we talked about, if it's in statute, that's great, but it also has to be identified in your application to be authorized. So as long as it's in the application, you have the flexibility each year to say, okay, we're gonna, here's a long-term project we want to borrow for, and we can predict the revenue, and we can, issue bonds, and we can use the TIF revenue to pay debt service on those for this particular project, as long as it's a category that's authorized in there. Whether it's more than you anticipated or less is not an issue, as long as the project is in there. And then in some cases, if it's an infrastructure project that is outside of the TIF district but supports economic development or supports another affordable housing project, that might fall in a couple of different categories. It's more accounting on the town side than it is anything else to one, just make sure that it's authorized. There's currently not an auditing process by DECD to check how municipalities are using these, but obviously we want to keep good
Our nose
records
is
of that we're consistent and complying with our own development program. So it's really making sure that we feel comfortable as as the council identifies projects, that it fits within one of these categories, and we'll assign them based on where we think we need to. Outside of district costs are, we need to make a connection to either the district itself and the activities in the district, economic development generally in the community, or one of these affordable housing or transit projects. So what you've just described likely fits in those, in those categories. It may not fit all in one, but that's okay as well.
Okay, thank you. Andrew?
So sort of following on Tig's question, the affordable housing in here, it has, costs associated with affordable housing as defined in, et cetera. In support of municipal economic development efforts and activities in connection with affordable housing. That seems very broad. So, Tig was talking about, adding a water line somewhere or something along that sense. Would that count as, supportive of affordable housing if we're doing infrastructure that also has all these other benefits, but then also, but allows an affordable housing development somewhere in town to be built? Does that fall under, the same sort of thing with transit of, if we want to put this towards 75% towards affordable housing and bringing bus service to that location would help the affordable housing aspect of that, would that fall under, or is that getting, sort of like too cute?
No, it's not getting too cute, and it is intentionally broad to give you that flexibility going forward. That the language in that really parrots the language in the statute. The language in the statute is broad, and the state defers to municipalities in terms of how they want to apply that language. And so, typically, my approach is, when you don't have a specific project in mind, to use the language from the statute so that you have the flexibility to identify what that actually means going forward. And frankly, it's to be interpreted when we get to that point to figure out, does it fit within this? There is not, there are not regulations that interpret this statute and give further guidance as to what this language means. It's really just as a matter of practice, what's been accepted and what's consistent with the statute, which I know is not a great answer. That's not all that helpful to you, but at the same time, it also provides a lot of flexibility to municipalities. And so the concern usually, and this doesn't have to be how we structure this, the concern usually is, if we're so specific when we don't know what the project's going to be, will we have to amend this again to address it going forward, which is absolutely an option. Some municipalities say, we don't want to leave it open-ended because we're concerned about where that could go in the future, and we're just going to limit it right now, and we'll deal with it when we have a project in mind. That's an approach. This is drafted from the opposite approach, to give you the greatest flexibility possible to address it when a project comes forward and make sure that it fits within it. But there, generally speaking, are three buckets of uses of TIF revenue. There's those that are within the district. There's those that are outside but are related to, and then there's those that fall in this kind of general economic development category. And the statute includes affordable housing in all three of them. So what ends up happening in practice is you kind of figure out where your project exists geographically in relation to the district, and which of those buckets it most neatly fits into. I mean, it needs to fit into one of them to be an eligible project cost. But there are times when the infrastructure may connect to the district, and that's in one category, and the project is well outside of it, and it's in another. There may be times where the infrastructure supports other economic development that's outside the district, and that's in one category, and the project is in the district. So it's often a combination. There are also times when, and this could be a reality for the town, when you include property in a district and down the road decide that you've got this great development concept for it and you want to pull it out and create a new district for it. That's an option too. And you always have the flexibility to remove a parcel and create a new district in the future. So that could certainly happen here, depending on where a project exists, and it may feel like a better fit at the time to have its own independent district. So it is broad, but it's really meant to provide you some flexibility in the future without a specific project in mind now.
Denise? Sorry, Denise, yes.
Kind of a follow-on to that and then a separate question. Under affordable housing, they talk about, services provided, operating costs associated with it, soft costs. I'm answering his question. He's not listening, so I'm just going to wait.
Oh, Andrew, I think Denise is addressing you directly. Oh,
Sorry.
the peanut gallery.
Regarding what falls under affordable housing, some examples include services provided, operating costs, soft costs, support services for residents of the district, childcare and recreation, and things like that. And those all fall under that affordable housing bucket, according to the interwebs.
There is, if it's helpful, just for reference, this is it's more instructive than necessarily specific legal authority, but the way that there are affordable housing TIF districts and there are development TIF districts. There are two separate types of districts overseen by two different state agencies. One's Maine State Housing, one's DECD. And they're two separate subchapters of the statute. When the development district statute authorized affordable housing, it used certain references to the affordable housing district statute. So just by cross-reference and, for what it's, I guess, to help sort of answer your question, the affordable housing statute is much more specific as to how TIF revenue gets used in an affordable housing district. This wouldn't be an affordable housing district, so I just want to be, careful to differentiate between the two. But there is guidance in the affordable housing section of the statute about how you use TIF revenue in those types of districts, and those are the things I think that you're mentioning, Denise, in terms of financing costs, capital costs, facilities, administrative costs, operating costs. Those are outlined in affordable housing, and we would look to those as just generally accepted uses of TIF revenue in affordable housing context, and frankly just take the position that because it was accepted there, it's appropriate here because that section of the statute is referenced. So those aren't included in the development district provisions, the subchapters. But by reference, I think you might just find those helpful to look at. They're a little bit more detailed than what you'd find in a general TIF district statute provision.
My question was, so all the different projects with no percentage allocated yet, does there need to be a percentage allocated for us to use that category? And I imagine you can't go through and say 1%.
Yeah. Well, I mean, frankly, DECD doesn't really care. They're not going to insert their judgment for yours. So if you put 1%, they wouldn't really question it. But they do ask for some allocation. They don't really like just sort of the placeholder. They want to know that the municipality is actually intending to make this a part of the program, notwithstanding the fact that there's no follow-up. They're not coming in each year and checking to see where you are on your percentages and your spending. And that's not commentary on whether they should or not. It's just the reality of their resources that they're not able to do that at this time. So it is intended to be an actual plan to you want to provide the public information on how you intend to utilize TIF revenue. The state wants to be able to answer those questions if they get them. Sometimes residents do call DECD and say, hey, what's this application say? And they keep their own records and they answer those questions. So they use this as a resource too. So we would want to allocate to any category that's here, and certainly those can be revised as you see fit.
Are we going to have a separate meeting to go over that, or is that just something that's going to happen with, in the interim before this is submitted?
That's up to you. I mean, it would be ideal to have direction from the council. We would really want at whatever you approve, if it's, whether it's tonight or at a subsequent meeting, to indicate what the goal is for those, even if it's just percentage allocation, and we can identify the dollars from there. But where that, how that gets calculated, as you'll see at the bottom, is there's $15 million of revenue that we're estimating from the projected increased assessed value over the life of this district. And so what we're doing is allocating that revenue among these project costs. And you have the discretion to determine whether to include all of these or some of these or whatever the case may be, and then allocate those. But that information should be determined by you before the application is finally approved. So if that's a conversation or feedback you want to provide this evening, that can be part of the order, however you'd like to do that.
Go for it.
So because this is an extension and we have the restraints of the 75% for housing or transit, for those numbers, do we need to have 75 of that 15 million? 75% of it has to be in housing or transit, and then the other 25 we have to play with, if you will.
Yes, yeah, we would allocate the other 25 among the other project costs. For now, given that we're not clear yet in terms of the legislative, potential change to the statute, my recommendation would be to indicate the 75, or to set a priority for the 75%, whether it's affordable housing or transit, and we would put a footnote that to the extent that the legislature authorizes a combination of the two, that you might do that. But if it has to be one or the other, I think the council should set that direction for the 75% until the statute makes that clear, and then everything else would be allocated. The 25% would be allocated among the rest.
Did you have something, Bob?
What if I fund a bond and I on an affordable housing project, and as that principal decreases, I now have a positive cash flow. That positive cash flow, is that my money to do as I will, or does that go back into my TIF pot?
Yeah, so it remains TIF revenue at all times, as long as it's coming from value that's captured in the district, whether you're using it on the bond or not. As long as the tax revenue came in from that increased assessed value, it's TIF revenue, unless the council says we're not going to shelter 100%. So you could shelter less than that, and it would go to the general fund.
How about 10 years out, 20 years out, 30 years out?
It's a 20-year extension.
Yeah, as long as the district is in place and you're capturing 100%.
So the TIF district at some point expires.
All of the revenue from the property once the district expires, or if you capture less than 100% in every year, goes to the general fund.
So my income from my project, can I use that to do other things in my community?
Once the TIF district has expired.
Or if you don't shelter it.
Generates revenue, not just property
Oh, you're-
tax revenue, but like
I see. Income from the rental income. I'm sorry. Yes, no. So rental income that is not a property tax payment is not part of the TIF district. That's separate income. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Andrew.
So going back to sort of the 75% of the transit or affordable housing, is that, or right now realizing that it hopefully changes, over the life of the district? Or is it a year-to-year thing in the sense of, in FY27, we use 75% for affordable housing, and then in 28, we use 75% for transit and all? Or does it have to be a sort of, once we made the determination of it's going to be affordable housing, that 75% has to be affordable housing for the next 20 years?
Yeah, it should be year to year, because again, there's no way to sort of look back. So there's not a mechanism right now to, at the end of a district, to go back and look and make sure that 75% over the total term was spent. So DECD is going to be looking at it year to year, that you are allocating 75% of what you're capturing in that year towards these projects. You don't necessarily have to spend it in that year, but you have to dedicate it towards those projects, so that when you get to the end, to your point, you have spent the 75%. But you wouldn't want to spend 100% in one year on an economic development thing and then sort of catch up in a later year. You should dedicate 75% each year.
Right, but we could, could we, for 5 years, because we got a affordable housing project that we want, build up that 75% for affordable housing, and then for the next 5 years, we've said, well, there's a transit project, so then we could switch for years 5 through 10, or 6 through 10, towards transit, and then well, there's another affordable housing project, so years 11 through 15, we go back to affordable housing. Can we do that?
I'm hoping so. That's the direction I don't have from DECD right now, because it's ultimately going to be their interpretation. I think you can. I think the intent of the statute was to give the flexibility that 75% is for one or the other, and that we are going to be asking to reserve the flexibility to make that decision, but it's really a conversation that DECD needs to approve that, because the statute's not clear on it right now. So that it's an open question for DECD to be able to weigh in when the application gets submitted as to how flexible you can be with the 75%. If not only can it be a combination, but can you pivot? My feeling on that, my position on it is you should be able to, because at any time in a TIF district, the municipality has the discretion to identify the use of the project costs by council vote. So from my view, worst case scenario is you would go through this process again in 5 years and say, okay, today we're designating this as affordable housing. In 5 years, we're gonna pivot our priority to 75% of transit. At worst, it would be this type of process. I'm not sure that's really going to be necessary, but if DECD said no, we'd like to know if you're going to make that priority change, then you would do this exact same thing again to be able to do that.
I have a couple, if it's okay with the council. There are a couple of questions that got emailed in from some residents, and I would just love to ask those questions and get kind of the expert opinion. So one of the first ones is, what's the financial impact for taxpayers if TIF 1 is rolled into the general fund and not extended?
Yeah, and I'll speak to it a little bit, but I know the manager has some more specific detail in terms of how the revenue is being used right now, which is obviously a big part of this. But from a high level perspective, when the valuation is no longer sheltered, as we talked about earlier, it is going to, and again, it's nuanced in terms of town valuation versus state valuation, but it's going to impact your calculations in terms of state revenue sharing, state aid to education, and increased county taxes. So the big takeaway there is whatever revenue, tax revenue you receive from that $43 million that's currently sheltered, the town is not going to retain 100% of that, because there will be an offset for increases or decreases for these other three formulas. A lot of the time, the sort of standard average rule is that's about 50% for most communities. It does vary, and it is obviously more nuanced in terms of how you calculate that. But that is what you can expect to receive or have for revenue for general fund purposes. And then from there, let's say, just for round numbers, as an example, let's say you have tax revenue in any given year of $700,000 from this valuation. And by not sheltering it any longer, in a TIF district, you have impacts from county taxes, state aid to education, and state revenue sharing, where you net $350,000 to the general fund each year. What you do with that is really the impact to the town, and that's where I'll turn it over to Matt in terms of how TIF revenue is being used right now, how much TIF revenue you're using for what projects, and then what would need to be absorbed in the general fund. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to have more money to spend. You may, in fact, have less, and you may have expenses that you're covering with TIF revenue now that you would have to make up the difference for. And I'll stop there and let you speak to that.
Thank you. Yeah, Madam Chair, thanks for that question. Council, I gave a pretty long memo to late this afternoon that I try to lay that out as well. If you look at the whole picture, I guess, and in the application, it shows the math on the education funding shift, the revenue sharing shift, and the county tax shift. On the education funding side of it, on what the district receives from the state, it's about $265,000 annually that will have to be made up by Cumberland taxpayers at that point, by the district. But ultimately, it's on the Cumberland ledger. Over 20 years, that's about $5.3 million is what that accumulates to. On the revenue sharing, the town would anticipate a reduction of about $25,500 annually. So that allocation would be less. So that difference, that comes in as revenue, so we would have to close that gap. That would be picked up by Cumberland taxpayers to close that gap of that loss in revenue. And on the county side of it, the county tax shift, that's also allocated by state revenue, state valuation. It's estimated that'd be about a $35,000 annual expense. The revenue sharing would cost over that 20 years, if it's not extended, about $500,000. The county would be about $725,000 annually. That would be an impact. So that all starts to stack up over time. Now, TIF 1 revenues are being used to offset some of our capital expenses and our operational expenses. About $380,000 worth of employee benefits and salaries are paid for out of TIF 1 on an annual basis. And so that would come off from the TIF budget and go onto the general fund budget. So that stacks up on top of the others as well. So you have that. Plus, there's the expenses that we have for such things as water line extensions that we're currently doing or just are working on over the west side. The Tuttle Road sidewalk, debt service for the fire department, all of that is currently being paid or it was paid in some form by TIF 1 revenues. So that all comes in there. So those would have to be found, or funding projects along those lines would have to be found from the general fund. So they would be competing with all the overall needs of the town. The other area to consider is the cost sharing agreement between Cumberland and North Yarmouth on MSAD 51, which is based on valuation. So if you add $43 million to the value of Cumberland, it changes that by about 0.6%, about 0.6% in the overall mix. But that's about $160,000 annually. So if you think about that, the value increase that's not sheltered anymore, and loss in revenue sharing, you're already $425,000 in the red, at least on having to find ways to put that in taxes. So when you start stacking all that up, I guess the way I look at it is ultimately the difference between what you would pay or more annually, either through loss of revenue or expenses going from the TIF account to your general fund ledger. The difference between basically the $1 million that you receive from TIF 1 in revenue and what that amount, the benefit of $43 million on the tax roll would be, is about $145,000 annually to the town's benefit. So, so you'd net out $145,000 that first year. Now, that $145,000 sounds like a pretty good deal. If you multiply that times 20 years, that's about $2.9 million. However, the long-term impact of the loss in funding and tax shifts over that time period is about almost $9.8 million. So that the net loss over that 20-year period is about $6.8 million. So by not capturing it, you save a little bit of cash on year one. It's almost like using fund balance that you would to buy down your tax rate in 1 year. Well, that's a 1 year benefit, but year 2, 3, 4, after that, it really gets absorbed into the budget. So by capturing that, the town's benefiting a lot more from that than it would be by picking up that, picking up that additional revenue in year one. It's kind of like saying you got a really good deal on a Jag, but you have to maintain that car. There's no such thing as a maintenance-free Jag.
It's like a Land Rover, right?
Like a Land Rover.
Yeah.
So it's kind of
in your perspective.
to put it into perspective, I guess. But yeah, you make a little bit on that first year, but it costs you a lot more over that 20 years. So the taxpayers basically would be taking a larger hit by not capturing that value, because it's already booked in there. So hopefully that's helpful to the overall picture.
Yeah, and thank you for the memo. I know that there are some folks at home that had some questions and they might not have seen the memo, so always good to, if it's okay to the council, I have just two other things from the public that I wanted to hit. And I think you sort of covered this one in your explanation there, but looking at if those funds were to go back into the general fund, what would that impact be on a senior tax relief program? Like, could you expand a senior tax relief program? But we'd still be looking at those costs that you mentioned, right? Like, is there anything that?
Yeah, I mean, you'd really have to bump that senior tax relief program to offset almost $6.9 million in expenses. You could, I mean, if you used it on the general fund, you could expand that by quite a bit annually to the bottom line a lot more efficiently using the general fund and through the normal budgetary process than if you, say, retired TIF 1, because again, you're going to have that bill that's going to come to you. So I'd look at it and say you probably want to keep that in your general fund and fund it that way. The growth that you'd have to do to make an impact on that, on the senior side of it, just, you know, as from the manager's perspective, would be less if you did it through an annual appropriation than if you really grew that, if you retired TIF 1, because you have to make up both ends. I guess at that point, it's almost compounding.
I just had a clarifying question because we just had an email come in that I was curious about. It said Cumberland is already paying more than its contractual amount for the SAD formula. Is that accurate? You can't say? Okay.
I can't say because I don't want to say. I'll have to get back to you on that.
Okay.
Just to get the math.
Okay. Thank you.
One other question that we had, I think, was, and I think Bob and I could talk about this a little bit because it's around the comprehensive plan, but one of the questions was kind of why now and, you know, why today? And should we wait for the results of the comprehensive plan and I think the comprehensive plan survey? I can say, and I think we've talked about this at past meetings, that there's been appetite of the council to understand kind of what types of projects, if we were looking at affordable housing and transit, would be appetizing to the town. We were able to finalize the survey, and the committee kind of took that on board through kind of, you know, the standard survey questions, which go into a little bit more detail than, do you support affordable housing, yes or no, right? And also offers the ability for folks to put in comments about, you know, what they would like to see from a housing perspective in town, you know, what would be okay with them. So we should be getting those results in, and we had some really candid and open dialogue while we were trying to create this survey, because I think everyone recalls our 2022 survey where it was like over 60% of people supported affordable housing, and then we had a 70% no on a project, right? So it's trying to understand what that disparity is, right? And what, you know, what would be, you know, what would be appetizing. So I just wanted to let that resident know that also we are digging into that as part of, you know, not just the survey, but also I think the in-person sessions that we have coming up will make sure that's a really concerted part of the data and kind of the outreach and the dialogues that we're having. But what I also wanted to check in with you guys about, and Bob, feel free to add anything, but we're expanding an option here, right? And the idea is around giving us another tool in our tool belt, and that is very different in my opinion, but, you know, please let me know what everyone else thinks about committing to doing a project tomorrow on affordable housing, right? Like, I think that everyone is still, I think that we can do both, right? We can extend the tool and then still drill into, drill into the results that we get, and kind of, is that accurate? Is that a fair assessment. It's not a, hey, tomorrow you need to give DECD, you know, a 15-step plan about what projects you're gonna do, how you're gonna fund it, how much they're gonna cost, right?
Yeah, that's accurate. So this sets either the framework or foundation, however you want to look at it, for the ability to do that in the future. It gives you, as you said, a tool and an option to support a project of that nature. It does not obligate the town to any particular project, especially with the flexibility in this application for the council to decide not to retain or capture value in the future. The district can exist and you can capture no value in any given year if you made that, if you made that decision, or a future council made that decision at any time. But this allows you the opportunity to have that conversation on a year-to-year basis, to have the district in place to evaluate that as you go along, and not have to, go through the process to actually establish it. You've set the framework, you've provided some kind of broad parameters under the statute, and then you get to just work within that on an annual basis going forward, as you determine long-range planning needs and goals, and get that feedback from the community. So it's an opportunity. I mean, it has to be done by next year if you're going to do it. That is sort of the outer time limit here. And this is we've started this conversation in anticipation of that, because it's really a good practice just to think about TIF districts and ramping them down. I would encourage you not to wait until next year, especially if the decision is not to extend it, because that's kind of a major it's a major off-ramp for the community, and we really should be planning ahead for that either way. So I think now is a really good time to be having the conversation, whichever direction you go in, I rather than waiting until next March when the district expires. But again, if you decide to move forward, it's just providing you the option.
Mr. Vail?
I think from a financial planning perspective, it makes perfect sense to be acting on this tonight. And we've certainly talked about it for well over a year. It's been topic of conversation for the 6 years that I've been on the council. I know it goes back a lot longer than that. But if any municipality, whether they're looking at a building project or an acquisition of a $1 million fire truck, or roof repairs on a large building, you plan ahead, you make the funds available for those unforeseen projects. And so this is to me, it's I'm not trying to show you where I'm going to vote, but I am going to vote for it, because it's a necessary thing for a prudent council to do.
Mr. Kopp?
A while ago, there was a long-standing joke that we would write the date a year from now behind that clock up there on the wall, that this was going to be one of the most important things coming down the road. And I agree with Bob. I mean, I think it's a no-brainer not to extend this. I can't believe that the taxpayers wouldn't come unglued if we didn't. The town manager hit it right on the head. It'd be like somebody giving you a Land Rover and you maintaining it for the next 5 years. What would it cost you, Bob? You know.
Bob has no money.
But no, he put it in my terms, I guess, is how I realize that. But because I'm a car dealer, but I would vote for this, and that's where I stand, so.
Mr. Magoon, and then I would be happy to have some public comment if that's acceptable to everybody. Yeah.
So, Matt, can you just remind me, or what having the TIF district does for any business that are looking to come in to the district, and if we have it in place or if we don't have it in place, and sort of the planning of somebody coming in and knowing that it's going to be extended, or knowing that it's not going to be extended, what that would do to their calculus.
Thank you for the question, Counselor. It's a tool that we could use if someone was looking to come new to town and use perhaps a credit enhancement agreement. There's a certain amount that they can receive up to from that, but by extending it, it does buy us other options for remaining properties that are within the district, or some currently existing properties that may need redevelopment or might make it attractive to them to come to town, knowing that they can have that, and it gives us a leg up in competition with other communities that may not have that ability. So if we can tie that to investment in the town or what their what their operations may come that they're bringing with them to the table, that makes them attractive as someone to come to town, jobs, excise tax amounts, things along those lines that maybe add to the bottom line. And so it does give us a leg up when it comes to negotiating if someone's looking to come to town, and it might be if versus another location that may not have it or may not have it in the location that they want it. So but it's definitely gives us an advantage. So if we could have that for another 20 years, that might buy us. It might be the difference between us getting one entity versus not getting them.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Bill, did you want to come up to the podium?
I thought it was at 6, so I
Could you, I'm so sorry, just your name and where you live
right.
for the stuff.
that's no big deal.
I'm sorry, it's
I
6:05.
was watching it at home, and then I said, yeah, I got to come down. I got a question. So one was, I'm kind of curious, Matt. There's 7 other districts, TIF districts, right? So when you were laying this out, what TIF 1, I can't agree more. It's kind of a no-brainer in a way. But I wonder what the other districts contribute. If you're just, I know this is your highest valued TIF district, and I just wondered where the other districts lay in here as far as valuation of what they bring to the town, and what, because I'm looking at the West Cumberland thing too. I look at the people in Bruce Hill Road and see what they've, I get some PMs from them every once in a while, like when we start talking about TIFs, what about us? And so I just wonder what the other income for, you don't have to give it the numbers, but that's 6 others, that are kind of counted in for income. So I just,
If I may, I'm happy to get it to you,
Yeah.
Bill, as well. TIF 1 is wildly successful.
yeah,
That's probably one of the best I've seen.
Yeah.
The others have been successful as well, but when you can capture, basically when you can come in at the point of inception, at 300,000 and you're at 43 million later,
yeah.
that's beyond where I think anybody would see. But I can get you the others
Okay.
as well. I just don't
Yeah,
have them off the top of my
I
head.
would figure you would. The other question, so last night, I threw up a post on Facebook, threw up a picture of an 800 square foot house, and it went crazy. And I waited for the comments. They're all pretty good. So I think that's something, if we're trying to get away from this burden of the school and bringing kids into the district, which I understand, developers have their land, they want to do it, and they want to make a profit and all that. But somewhere in there, I think we've got to find a compromise for the seniors here and younger people. And I think that, these 800 square foot houses that doing a community with that would really lessen the burden on this community. I don't know how we do it. I don't have any ideas. I think that it would have to go with town-owned land and maybe rentals. Maybe the rental thing would work out that way. Because if these seniors can leave their multi-bedroom house to get into something smaller that allows them to stay in the community, access the hospitals, which is important as you age, that maybe this works out. Families are going to move into those other houses. Maybe it lowers the cost of a house in this place. I don't know. I don't have all the answers. Just try to come up with ideas. But maybe something to think about, as we go into this affordable housing, which nobody seems to have a grasp on what that exactly means. All right, thank you.
Thanks. Oh, Denise? And then Andrew?
I have like 5 things to talk about.
Oh,
Can go one at a time, I guess, or like trade off.
got plenty of time. Go.
Just been taking lots of notes. Oh God, where do I start? Well, one thing that came to mind when Bill was mentioning smaller things and how to kind of do that. I know we're very different than Scarborough, but they have a rate of growth ordinance where, that's something we could consider if it ever came down to it. Basically, you have your building permits, but you can only make, a small percentage of McMansions in a given year. More permits for smaller homes, and then lots of permits for like starter homes that are smaller, single, maybe 2 bedrooms or something like that. So that's one way that they are kind of dictating what kind of things will be built in town. Aside from that, I don't know if we want to talk about allocating the percentages based on these project areas, but throwing it out there from what I'm thinking, obviously we have to have 75% to housing or transit. I would say housing would be the preference for me. But then 3 that stood out to me, depending on what other districts are already funding public safety, and then like water, sewer, internet expansion, if those are already taken care of elsewhere, whatever. But those 2 stood out to me. But also one specifically that looks really attractive to me in investing some of the percentage in is the economic development piece, especially having dedicated staff to attract businesses. It talks about marketing, attracting businesses, getting the town out there, making events, things like that, specifically to entice the types of businesses that we want to come into town. So that's my 2 cents on that one. And then additionally, Exhibit N, which is blank, because we don't have a TIF policy. I know they're not mandatory, but was talking to counselors Filson and Douglas before this meeting started, but kind of whether we should I think we should come up with, especially if we're throttling, an actual plan or guidance or some sort of SOP on TIFs in general, and especially the ones that are throttleable, as far as when should we consider throttling versus when should we consider capturing full value, and having criteria so that in a given budget year, whether it's the Finance Committee and TIF Committee talking about it and kind of weighing what's going on in the short and long term, having criteria that you point to and explain this is why we throttled or didn't in this year, and it's tied to this project or this focus, with some rationale, and that could kind of just be like baked into the budget process. Because I think for me, the ability to throttle is like the main selling point with an extension, but only if we use it. I mean, if it, we don't have to use it just for the sake of using it, but really like looking every year and what's happening in the next 18 to 24 months where we need some actual funds put into some sort of TIF project versus, inflation is horrifying right now. Let's instead, focus on putting some more stuff into the general fund to cover some of that. So getting an actual policy or at least like a guiding document laid out and something we can all agree on and something we can point back to, not only for us, but like for future councils, because there's turnover, some continuity, and just something also that could be on the website, public can, reference back to it, like why decisions were made and what guidance that was following. So it's not so like willy-nilly year to year, we're kind of just floating around making choices. So.
Can I say one thing to that?
Please.
I would agree about the policy piece of this. I think what would be most effective is to do that when we're not in a time of making a decision. So like,
yeah, totally.
Which is so more so like, I don't want to be under financial strain and be like establishing something. So like really making sure we're eliminating any biases in the crafting of that so that it, to your point, has full continuity as we move forward.
Mr. Magoon.
I also have notes. I feel like you answered this a while ago in one of our previous workshops, so I apologize for asking again, but how does DECD define affordable housing? Is it, because you say affordable housing and there are, 10 or 15 different definitions of, X percentage of the poverty rate or the median income or anything like that. How is that defined in here?
Sure. So for purposes of a TIF district, it is defined as a living accommodation for a household whose income does not exceed 120% of the median income for the area as defined by HUD.
Okay. Thank you.
The municipality has the ability to lower that as well, right? It's just up to that point?
It's
That
right.
you
That's
can make it
sort of
lower.
a minimum threshold, like, or a.
Mac.
It's a minimum for DECD's purposes. It can't be more than that, if that makes sense. But you can lower the threshold if you want to. Yeah.
That was median income of the municipality or of
The area.
The area.
area.
The,
So that'd
yeah,
be
the
like
HUD area.
Greater Portland
Yes.
area.
So I think it's the Greater Portland metropolitan area for Cumberland.
All right. And then this is more for you, Matt. Of TIF 1's money, how much of that is already allocated to specific things? You know, it is paying for a firefighter, or it's paying for a portion of office staff, or anything like that. You know, and how much of then sort of inversely, how much would we have to, I don't want to say play with, but to use to potentially, you know, hire an economic development coordinator, or, you know, hire other staff, or, you know, more paramedics, or anything like that?
I think it breaks down to about 35% of what we're currently using. So there may be some in there, but or you could reallocate how it's currently being used into other areas. So it's just a question of how you wanted to push, where you wanted to split that or allocate that amount to. So if, like, we may have a couple of firefighters that are fully paid for out of there, and then you know, part of my salary also would come from that, because you know, in a sense, traditionally the manager's been in many ways the economic development person as well for the town, as well as the planner. So kind of worked on it from that point. So it's just a question of how you want to allocate that, and what you want to push towards the general operating budget. And it's something that we would look at on an annual basis, or you know, manager would come through after working with staff and bring it to the council, and the council, you know, through the process that we just completed, would look at that and say, well, we'd like to push that over here a little bit more, and have more set aside in the TIF fund for this position, or for these purposes. So council would make that determination annually.
So if it's 35%, then we'd have to find funds elsewhere, whether it's other TIF districts or from the general fund, to bring that down to 25%. Right?
Yeah, we'd have to move the deck chairs around, for lack of a better way to put it. You'd look at the other TIF districts and find out how it would work to meet the needs of the town, but also try to, you know, balance that with the needs of the taxpayers as well.
All right. Thank you.
Other questions, comments, or discussion points? Mr. Vale, Mr. Bob.
I think there's a inherent danger in pulling money, small chunks of the TIF money out for positions. I think that, you know, our focus should be on projects, and making sure that the funds are there allocated, and we don't have to spend that money this year. That pot of money can grow till there is till the project that we want to fund, sponsor, whatever. So, you know, I'm always a little, you know, shady on, let's put a little money here for this position, let's put a little money here for that position, because it really takes away from our game plan.
Sure. Denise?
My question on that would be $380,000 we'd have to come up with from the general fund to cover the salaries and benefits that are coming out of TIF. So where would that come from, if not from, you know, the allowed uses of the district?
That's a good question, but we got there somehow, and so we may want to revisit that as a percent year by year.
If I could, to Council Vale's question, over the long haul, with all the TIFs and where they're going to perform, financially, you're gonna have to find ways to spend those funds over the long term by the time they all wrap up. So in the whole mix of it, and I'm not justifying it one way or the other. I'm just saying, as the funds grow, the majority of it's going towards capital projects and trying to find what those capital projects are. On the other side of it, it's trying to find ways to pay for operational expenses that are allowed in the district that benefit the town, but don't impact their bottom line on the tax rate. So I think you can accomplish both goals: conservative taxation policy plus I'd say a moderate to aggressive capital planning, and it's been successful over the years as well. So I think you can serve both masters when it comes to that.
Can I add to that? Another comment I wanted to make in terms of the allocation of TIF revenue towards personnel specifically. I typically understand your point, Councillor Vale, in terms of just the smaller portions of the pie being spread out. Although I will say that I typically recommend doing that, and the reason I do that is that personnel costs or administrative costs as a use of TIF revenue really needs to have a relationship to the activities of TIF districts or economic development. And for most municipalities, you don't have a dedicated one person or full department who does exclusively that. And so it's pretty common for a number of different people, as the manager said, to be involved in some way in activities related to the district. And that spreads out across economic development, planning, managers, assessors, public safety. And most of the time, it's difficult to justify a full salary of one person who's solely dedicated to a TIF district. So a lot of times I give the advice that you really shouldn't fund a full salary or, of a person through a TIF district. So we typically do, kind of work through the exercise of prorating it for that reason. So that's why you end up with kind of the smaller pieces. And I think it is more easily justified under the development program to make those connections to the activities of districts. So while it ends up being sort of piecemeal, it is also really consistent with the plan, though, and the intent of the use of the TIF revenue. So, it's a common practice among municipalities that have multiple districts, and I think that's really why it's been developed here in particular, because of the nature of the services that are being provided and who's responsible for what.
Mr. Kopp?
One of the big things that we've talked about for years is affordable housing. The only way affordable housing is going to work in this town is if it's town-owned land. Harris Road, for instance, house lot's $475,000 for a house lot. The only way you're going to accomplish any affordable housing is to extend this TIF. It's the only feasible way. Other than that, you might as well forget about affordable housing. There's no way you could ever accomplish it. No way.
Matt, this is an aside question. At what point do we explore getting an economic development person? I understand it kind of falls to a lot of different people, but I think on my time on the council and, some of my council time, the conversation has always been the development and good development, right? So of, West Cumberland in particular. And so at what point is it a conversation? Is that a post-comp plan conversation where because time passes, right? And then we're a year later. And then, I think there's a lot of frustration based on some of the feedback that I was reading surrounding the lack of development, which obviously predates you or has to do with so many different factors that impact those things. But at what point does it become this is where we're digging in, this is where we're spending the money? It's feedback that we've heard across the board. I know the comp plan's doing a survey, but it's at what point does that shift to not be 5 different people's kind of responsibility, and we really focus our money knowing that the return on that type of investment will be much greater, especially compounded over the years? because I feel like we're there, but it's just like someone needs to say that we're there, and it's like, let's make the decision and move forward kind of thing.
It's a tough question to
I know.
answer because, and I've seen, we hired one in Gray when I was on the council, and there wasn't enough for the person to do,
Yeah.
and that's the big concern. It's almost like you'd want to contract with someone to do that, contract with a marketing agency or some type of marketing agent to try to do that. The bigger lift you have is in your land use ordinances when it comes to that, and trying to find ways to make it financially feasible for them to do. And similar to what council looked at a month ago to allow mixed commercial use on Route 100 corridor and on Route 1 to try to have that kind of expands the possibilities so people who are investing can find a way to generate revenue and make an income property feasible. And then it's a question of land use and the intensity of the land use and how that coincides with what the comp plan is the big side of it.
Yeah.
To Councilor Reed's point last week, North Yarmouth just expanded it by an hour their operational abilities for Vesta in the town center. Filled the room for Monday night to have a discussion on adding 2 hours. So it depends upon what you want to accomplish. So part of that's the larger community conversation that you have with the comp plan. But then, but if you decide that you want to go down that route, I'd probably say,
Contractor.
find a way to collaborate with another community, cost share on something like that, or contract a marketing agent to do something like that. But then it comes down to they still would have to work through. You got a great planning board here.
Yeah.
It's I've seen both sides of that coin. Cumberland has a really good planning board, so I think that makes a difference when it comes to I don't want to say user friendliness, but it's really taking a sober look at what's proposed and trying to see what's going to work and they're very thoughtful about how they try to do their job. So that's a big attribute that's a check mark in the right position. And I was just talking with a gentleman who did Rusty Lantern today, and talked about that whole process and how that's been, how Cumberland has been a great place to work with, and so that's a good thing. And so I think that helps, but probably, long story short, I don't know if there's enough there to justify having a person who's here Monday through Friday trying to beat the bushes, but that's just been what I've seen in the
Bailey,
past.
What would you expect that person to do? Bring business into Cumberland? Is that what you're thinking?
I think it's land management, identifying. I mean, there's two variables to it, right? I think Denise brought up a good point earlier about events and things like that, and I just think I look at West Cumberland and I live over there, so I feel the same frustrations. We have 3 weed stores. I'm grateful we have them, but I think it's just not exactly the kind of business district that people are looking for, right? Some sort of grocery store or something that can make the folks in West Cumberland's lives easier and also help the tax impact. So how can we, for example, I brought up last week that lot is for sale across from Ron's, and it's who in that scenario, obviously it falls to Matt, but it's what are the things that we can be doing to have someone in the community that's coming to the table? I've heard the same sentiments from Bob about frustration surrounding this person's selling that and we don't know about that. And it's having someone with kind of their ear to the ground to know what's coming up and what we can do to either connect someone to take over that business or work with the greater Portland area to develop it in a really strong and impactful way. I see Rusty Lantern come in and I'm excited about it because it's a big building, but it's nice and it feels nice. It feels like we have a business that's a business that's big, and I don't know. So it's how do we continue to make it more of that, but not overdevelop it?
The point for my question, Bailey, is we have had short-sighted councils in the past that have taken our prime business real
Yeah.
estate, and we've developed it into affordable housing.
Okay.
Morrison's Hills is a perfect example. Route 1, where we've got all the apartments, and that was all business. And what's left on Route 1 really to develop? That's
Yeah.
why I'm getting
Yeah.
this. Would the investment be worth it? Because you're talking very little real estate left on Route 1, if any.
Yep.
And then on Route 100, there's not much left. I mean,
Yeah.
it's pretty much. So
Your point is what's left.
I think if the councils in the past had not taken commercial property and put it in development, I think I'd be jumping right on board with you.
Yeah.
But I just don't, we don't have it. We've got 2 business districts, and we're not gonna change Main Street.
Yeah.
What do we have left?
Yeah. I think it's also less about like what we own, but like what else is left out there
Yeah.
to acquire and to like be actively pursuing, not necessarily for us to acquire. And I don't know enough about economic development, but like becoming the connective tissue to say like, okay, this business lot is available and let's pursue so-and-so to, put a business there, or just like, and I don't know how that stuff happens, so I'm sorry if this sounds uneducated, but I think
Not at all.
it's a struggle when these opportunities come up, and I feel like we're met with frustration from residents because we haven't met expectations in certain areas, and it's like, so what can we do to meet those expectations and to set ourselves up to meet them in the future when those opportunities do arise? And yeah, I don't know if it's a full-time person doing that, but I'd have to understand a little bit more about what those roles consist of and how that would sit within an operation like this. But I just asked the question because I don't want to lose more time. I feel like we're losing a lot of time. So
If we were able to be successful and got that turnpike exit that we pushed for, West Cumberland would be a whole different conversation.
yeah,
But look where the growth is. Gray's got an exit. They've got a busy business district. Falmouth, busy. Us, we're stuck in the middle, and we pushed hard, and we got broomed by the Turnpike Authority and says, yeah, we're not going to get to it, and it's going to cost millions and millions and millions, and they weren't going to do it. So,
yeah.
but
Ron?
18 years ago, there was 0 commercial business on Route 1. 0. There was no exit off 295 to Route 1 in Cumberland. Look at Route 1 now. We do have an exit. You have 3 commercial districts in the town of Cumberland. Route 1, Route 100, and Longwoods Road, which is a small district, Longwoods Road. 2 years from now, West Cumberland's going to look a lot different. Trust me.
Hope so.
Guaranteed. How do you feel about a daycare on Route 100 in West Cumberland?
Well, now that my kids are done,
How do you feel about a daycare?
Excellent.
I love it. Urgent care.
How do you feel
daycare.
about a financial institution?
Great.
Don't hold your breath, but it'll happen.
Okay.
It's going to take a while.
Yeah.
The problem is we've been a bedroom community for 18 plus 200 years. I mean, things will happen, but they're going to happen slowly.
Yeah.
Route 1 is pretty well built out. There's, what, maybe 1 lot left down there, I think? I mean, Route 100, I can think of 8 to 10 lots that will be developed or redeveloped in the next 10 years, and I'll guarantee that. I mean, things are going to happen. It's taken time. 18 years ago, we were 2% commercial. I think we're up to, what, 6.5 now? I mean, we're really flying. But, I mean, it will happen. And I know what you're saying, Bailey. I mean, you can't control what goes in. We have zoning for a special reason because that's, certain things are allowed in certain zones. I don't think you can attract a Shaw's but I do think you could attract a Hannaford. I mean, the Hannaford in Gray is booming. The one in West Falmouth is booming, but Mike hit it right on the head because they can get off the highway and they can grab what they need to go home.
Yeah.
They have to get off the highway, grab what they need, and then come to Cumberland.
Yeah.
And that's been a major crisis. I mean, and I talked to the Turnpike guys because I was adamant that we should have a Turnpike exit. I forget his name now, Peter, that was a manager, Peter Mills. He's retired now, and there's another new guy taking off. Eventually, they're going to extend the Turnpike 3 lanes from West Falmouth to Lewiston. And he said when they do that, they would look very seriously at the exit in Cumberland. And they even talked about going through the service plazas so that they didn't have to build any more off ramps or overpasses. It'll come, but it's going to take time.
Yeah.
I mean, trust me, tonight's my last night being on the council. But I mean, I'm serious. Mark my words. It's going to happen, and it won't be that long. I mean, 18 years has gone by like that. My oldest grandson is graduating from high school from Wyndham next week, and it seems like just the other day he was born. So, I mean, progress takes time, but it'll happen.
Denise, do you have something?
Following on that, and why I think it is a good idea to allocate some sort of percentage to this, because this is a plan for the next 20 years, right? And it says staff salaries and or consultant fees, and it covers a wide range of stuff. Like for whoever isn't looking at this right now, economic development programs and activities of the town, not just the district, directed at business retention and attraction, including but not limited to economic development staff salaries and or consultant fees, costs of funding economic development programs, events, or marketing of the town as a business or arts location. So just some sort of allocation to that, I think, would be wise. And again, this is like a long-term plan. So having something there and having that available, I think, is important. And yeah, we probably should look at the ordinance and allowed uses in the district if we don't want any more weed shops, or we want to specify certain businesses. But even then, like writing the ordinance and sitting there and waiting for someone to show up isn't, I don't think, the way to do it. I think there needs to be some sort of outreach. So
Could we also, or just a reminder that a lot of this is, and I know the comp plan takes time, but the comp plan is also supposed to take time for a reason, right? So a lot of these elements are also being dove into, not just in a survey, but also at the subcommittee level, where we have people, going to be spending a lot of time doing a lot of community outreach also to understand what kind of those priorities are. And I know that everyone's rolling their eyes because, like, every time you read the comp plan, it's like, we'd love to have like a craft brewery and like a tiny grocery store. It's like the same things over and over and over. But I also want to temper our, like, Bailey, I hear you are like such an action person, which I love because you always keep us going. You're like, what's next? What's next? What's next? And at the same time, it's incumbent on us to also go through this process, right? And understand what the results of all of those are, and, like, of course, work on things at the same time.
Yeah.
And kind of be in higher communication. And I think Bob and I can also, as we begin to get into our subcommittee work, much of which is around economic development, zoning, land use, what are the things that people want to see? What are the changes which will eventually, bubble its way back to us, and then will go to us at the ordinance level to take action on. I just think it's also, I'm hoping to reassure you that there is a lot of hard work going in at the comp plan level to dive into a lot of that. Get it, girl?
yeah, I get all that. As far as like the types of businesses and like the direction, all that. But this is specifically related to extending the TIF and this application and us needing to allocate percentages to it.
Got it. I misunderstood you.
So just for me, having any sort of percentage in that box for when it does come, and we do know what we want, and we, are starting to try to build something out in the way that residents want, not just, haphazard development for whoever decided to come in the moment, like purposeful, trying to attract particular types of things or marketing. So just for the purposes of this application, which if this does go forward tonight, needs to be filled out soon, so it can be submitted, and we need to have percentages assigned to boxes. So that's it.
I think we've all convinced ourselves it's going forward.
I just want to, the gas station that's closed on Main Street and Route 1, which is now a repair facility, in the council's mind, is that more valuable as commercial property or residential house lot when it goes on the market?
Commercial.
But there's nothing that says they can't buy that and put a house there. And that's to Mike's point. I mean, commercial property has more value to this community than just the dollars because of the schools and all of that. I mean, and you know, to Mike's point exactly, you know, if somebody bought that lot tomorrow and they wanted to build a McMansion house on it, it's a permitted use. So it's worth it to the town council to look at the fact that that property should stay commercial.
Bob and then Andrew, because Andrew's been waiting.
Before Bill left, he and I had a conversation about getting a right of first refusal on that piece of property. So that conversation happened a year ago, and it's
But you're only doing that so you can control what goes on it.
commercial use,
Change the zoning.
commercial use.
Change the zoning, you don't have to buy it.
Which is part of the comp plan.
If you change the zoning, it's zoned, I mean, exclusively, cut some of the uses out.
That's what I mean, Bob. I mean,
Okay.
that's what you know, just put a stipulation on it that it remains commercial. Whether it be a flower shop or it be a whatever, you know,
That's-
Oak Street Market, for instance. I mean, to me, something like that would be perfect on Main Street in Cumberland.
I'm with you. Andrew?
What about a weed
Oh.
shop?
So,
No, we don't need any more.
With a storefront this time.
Yeah.
So, Matt, with these numbers and allocations, I think it'd be more effective for, you know, you, maybe with Alyssa, maybe not, you know, come sort of say, all right, this is what we expect and all. And so is it then you do that and then it comes back to us at our next meeting on like the 16th and we say, yep, those numbers, they work for us, and then it goes forward? Or what sort of, like, because you were saying, you know, you need buy-in, it would be great to have buy-in from us on where we're putting, you know, at least something down for the state to look at and say, all right, you know, you've actually looked at this, as opposed to just, you know, like putting 1% down and then 75% in one spot.
Yep.
And all.
So either this evening you would give us that feedback, obviously, you know, just as an option, you could talk about it and say, we want 75% to housing and allocate the rest accordingly. You could say, we want 75% to housing and we delegate to the manager to assign the rest. Or you could say, we want to delegate to the manager to come up with a proposal and then come back to us for approval. Those are all options. But ultimately, if you don't specifically delegate to the manager to make that decision tonight, or don't make that decision tonight, it's going to need to come back to you to sign off on a final application before it can go to DECD. You know, if the application doesn't substantively change in terms of the project cost categories, meaning you don't take out half of them and totally change direction on this, you don't need to have another public hearing. But if you completely change the direction of what the application looks like and, you know, what you're planning to do with it, then I would recommend another public hearing if you do that. So up to you, but certainly whatever action you take this evening should include some direction either to the manager to allocate or even a decision among the council to allocate, which can then be plugged in and submitted to DECD without further action.
unless anyone has anything else, maybe we'll take a quick recess before our meeting. But does anyone else have any questions before we do that?
I'd just like to thank Denise for the suggestion that this be, I mean, as much as I would have rather been somewhere else for between 5 and 6.
What?
I think we've proven that we can all talk.
5 and 7.
Well, we would have been here at 6.
Oh, okay.
For expanding it to 2 hours as opposed to just 1 hour. I think it was useful to be able to have the time to discuss and really like hash things out.
I was going to thank you for being here 2 hours early.
I'm just glad I knew it was at 5 and didn't show up at
Right.
6.
And we're glad you're feeling better, Alyssa.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate everyone's flexibility last week.
And this goes without saying, Bill Shane thinks that you're the expert on this, and obviously you are, so. Thank
He's,
you very
he-
much, so.
Absolutely, yeah, he's had a lot of experience over the years in working through these districts.
Yeah. He said, if you need an answer, call Alyssa, so.
All right, we'll take a little sneaky recess. Thank you, Alyssa.
I was always for the 2 hours.
Yeah, we used an hour and 45 minutes.
Just happened to be that we ended up.
everybody, and happy Monday. Today is Monday, June 2nd, 2025. In case you didn't know that, now you do. We will call the Cumberland Town Council meeting to order. At 5 p.m. tonight, we had a workshop with our town attorney on the extension of TIF District number 1. First up on the agenda is the approval of minutes from the May 27th, 2025 meeting.
I'll give you a I'll give you a second.
All right. Is there any discussion on the motion? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Unanimous, Brenda. Okay, next up, we have our manager's report. Mr. Sturgis, what's cooking?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good to see everybody this evening. Seems like we were just here last week, so it's good, good to see everybody again. A few different updates this evening. First off, the town has received 2 proposals for the legal RFP that we went out to. So if I could get 2 volunteers from the council, if you'd like to let me know at the end of the evening to sit down and review them with me, be great. I'd like to have something ready perhaps for recommended action for the June 16th council meeting. And
Fine.
so if you'd like to self-select, that'd be great.
One?
Madam Chair?
Right now?
Sir,
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
all right, Denise.
Depends when.
Oh, I think after the meeting.
An agreeable, tonight?
Yeah.
No, we can grab a day
Oh.
or two over the next week or so.
Why not?
Okay.
That'd be
Okay.
great.
Cool
Thank
beans.
Thank
Sorry.
you for that. You may have noticed that paving is continuing across town. We're ahead of the curve this year, so that's great. There is a lot of shim and overlay work that is taking place at the present time. There was some question regarding if that is to the extent that some roads may need. Most of the roads, if not all, have been evaluated for PCR, which is the pavement condition rating. And so they've looked at that across town to look at how the best ways to maintain them are. The shim and overlay is one of the most successful ways to do it. If you let it go too far at that point without doing that process, you may end up losing the road. But the roads that we do have haven't got to the point that they are ready for reconstruction. So a lot of that's, it looks like they've just done a partial job. They're coming back. So they'll do the shim work and fix the holes where they do exist, and then they will lay an 1.5 inch overlay above the top of that. And the one thing Assistant Manager Bolduc and I were talking about is once the shim and the overlay job is done, the next call that comes in is excessive speed on the street, because that new condition paving does increase speed. So we do need to step up our enforcement actions after that to get people to regulate their behaviors afterwards. The election is next Tuesday. So the polls will be open from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. However, if one still wants to absentee vote, this is the week to do it, but the last day is Thursday. So otherwise, you can come on in, and we do have both the school budget referendum confirmation and local offices that are up for vote. The clerk's office will be closed on that day because they'll all be right in here. I met with Jim Howard today from Dirigo Properties, and they will be opening the Rusty Lantern roughly either the 11th or the 12th of June. So it's amazing. When we first came through, it was the July 4th was their anticipated opening, and almost a month early. So that's great to see that. They're making great progress over there on the west side. Last thing I want to do is I want to thank Councillor Kopp. I know this is his last meeting this evening, and it's been, my first meeting was your last, and so I couldn't be more grateful to have had you on here for the extra 6 months. It's been bonus time, so I'm grateful for your service. So thank you for that.
Appreciate it.
And it's and the last thing I have is as of tomorrow will be 1 year that I've been with the town. Not that I've been counting the days, but
Ooh.
just happens to line up that way. So it's been a great year, a great council, and a lot of good things accomplished with a lot of good people pulling the ropes in the same direction. So we've got a really great team here, and I couldn't be happier with the team that we have. So
And you're still here.
couldn't be happier, Madam Chair. That's my report for this evening.
I would, just before we go to our normally scheduled programming, especially since we have a nice group of folks here, I would like to give everyone on the council just the opportunity to piggyback on. Thank you, Ron, so much, not only for your service in the past 6 months, unexpected, but also for your service beforehand. When I personally think about the everyday kindnesses and the people that show up for one another, you are one of always the people at the top. Just even if it's not even if you're not towing someone out, just kind of that constant kindness and steadfastness, and just really caring about the town on behalf of the entire council, as well as town staff will be making a $1,000 donation to the food pantry in your name. As a thank you for your service. But if anyone else wants to say anything, and you can, of course, during new business too, but.
Thank you very much.
Ronnie, I just want to say thanks. Last fall we were put in a position, this council was, where we've never really had it happen. We had a counselor get done, and thankfully, because we hired her, yeah, that was a big bonus. But we were stuck. We just headed into budget season.
All right.
And there was no downtime. We had to hit the ground running. And I remember getting a call from Bob about, what do you think about Ron? And you were a round peg in a round hole. And Ronnie, thank you so much. I've known you all my life, and all you've done is step up for this community. And I really appreciate it, Ronnie. You're a good man.
Thank you. Thank you, Bob.
Public service doesn't go without acknowledgement that there almost always is somebody at home. Ronnie's wife has really stood tall over the years, and I think that a particular thank you has to go out to you for, all the, yes. Anyways, thank you for your service too.
So I'd just like to say I've been here for almost 13 years. Of those, 6 months you haven't been on the council?
Yeah.
So I've got like another 6 months where I've understood that.
Okay.
But after that, I think we're going to need to find a way to at least get you back in here, because, when I was looking to run and then having you back on, the wisdom and the knowledge and that history has been a great asset to me, I think to everybody else up here and out there. And it's going to be difficult losing that institutional knowledge again, realizing that we lost it, a year ago, but then you came back for a bit. So thank you.
I'm not going anywhere, so I'm just a phone call away.
Luckily, you live near me.
Yeah. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Ron. We love you. Sorry, that was probably too sappy for public service, but whatever.
It's in the minutes now.
It's in the minutes now. Okay, next up we have public discussion. Public discussion is for comments on items that are not on the agenda. Comments are limited to 5 minutes per person. Rebuttal comments will be limited to 2 minutes. Public discussion topics may be brought up again under new business for further council discussion. Is there anyone here who would like to come chat with us or wax poetic about Ronald Kopp? Yes. If you wouldn't mind just telling us where you live and what your name is, please.
Liz Tarantino, 29 Daffodil Lane, Cumberland. I'm here because I thought we had our mass gathering permit for the fair on today's agenda based on our meeting that we had in May. And I'm not seeing it there now, and I didn't look until I got here. So I just want to know if we need to be here today or not.
Oh, Liz, I'm sorry. We'll have it on for the 16th.
Okay.
My apologies.
Not a problem. That's all right.
I
That's
don't know
what
how
I had
that
for my
snuck by
notes,
me.
but
Yeah,
no
sorry about
worries.
that.
That's all. Thank you. We'll see you in 2
Would
weeks.
you like a chocolate-covered strawberry for your efforts? Because we have one. Okay. Okay. Sorry about the confusion, Liz.
Yeah, sorry.
We'll see you next time.
Shoot.
Sorry you don't get to play mass gathering with us again.
Sorry, Ron.
You'll probably get it.
You'll probably get it.
Oh, I don't know how that snuck by.
Not if Freiberg has anything to say about it. Anyone else?
My
Oh.
apologies.
Oh, no, that's okay. You can keep your job for another year, maybe. We'll see. All right, if no one else has anything for the public, we'll move on to legislation and policy. For legislation and policy, there is always the opportunity for public comment. Per Article 2, Section 7 of the Town Charter, there will be an opportunity for public comment on each item of the agenda, and comments are limited to 5 minutes per person. 25-057 to hear an update on Valhalla from Nick Plummer and Toby Young. Nick and Toby, we're so excited you're here.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for having us. Kind of coming in blind here. Spoke to Mr. Eads about a month ago and said he'd be delighted to have us come to a council meeting. So happy for the opportunity to speak with you all tonight and answer any questions you have about the golf course. I just want to give a quick brief overview about how the season's going to start. Memberships are full as they've been the last 4 years. We currently have 403 members, of which 148 of those are Cumberland residents, about 36%. We have a current waitlist of about 137 people. That excludes town of Cumberland residents. Residents can join at any point in time. We cap our memberships at 375, so we've actually added 28 additional members this year out of Cumberland residents, which is awesome. A lot of those being junior MS80 51 memberships. Of the breakdown, just a quick breakdown of the type of memberships. We have 265 full members. That's Saturday through Sunday, 7 days a week, anytime play. We have 96 weekday members, and we have 42 junior and college members. On to the fun stuff that I like talking about, at least. We have 18 golf outings this year. What's nice about those, we have some that are for, professional organizations, associations, businesses, but we also have a lot that gives back to the community and gives back to great fundraising campaigns, on a larger spectrum. Included in those were the Cumberland North Yarmouth Lions Club event that we hosted in early May. In August, we're going to be hosting a Greeley alumni tournament that helps the Greeley golf team and Greeley boys basketball teams raise money for their seasons this year. We have a fundraiser that's sole beneficiary is Camp Sunshine. We hosted that a couple of weeks ago. Next week, we have our Dream Week, self-titled by myself. We have Dream Factory of Maine on Monday, and then on Friday, we have Make-A-Wish. Both events are over 120 participants, which is kind of the max you can have on the golf course without it being overcrowded. And then at the end of this month, we're hosting the Travis Mills Foundation, which is a 144-person event. Travis has graced us with his presence the last 3 years, and it's probably, not that I pick favorites, but probably my favorite event of the year. Great turnout, really great cause, and Travis is an absolute character if you haven't seen him or dealt with him before. In addition to our outside outings, we're also hosting 2, what I'll say, championships, statewide championships and New England championships. At the end of July, we're hosting the Maine Junior Amateur Championship run by Maine Golf. And then in August, we are hosting a qualifier for the 2025 New England Senior Amateur, which will be played at a golf course in York County this year. Those are kind of a way for us to put our golf course and Toby's efforts for the season kind of on show for everyone in the state, for people, playing golf in the greater New England area. And then the last thing I have is junior golf. Probably the best use of the facility from a town perspective, in my opinion. We offer programs from ages 5 to 14, after school programs for middle schoolers, early release Wednesday programs for 3rd to 5th graders, 7 weeks of summer camp, which will start on June 23rd and will run till the middle of August. Of those 7 weeks, 82% of the participants in a completely sold out and mega waitlisted program, 82% of those are Cumberland and North Yarmouth students. First year that I've been at Valhalla, which is a long time, that all the full day camper spots before non-residents had a chance to register were filled completely with Cumberland and North Yarmouth kids, which is really, really awesome. Usually it's about a 50 to 60-40 split of residents, obviously including North Yarmouth residents for junior programs and non-residents. And I had quite a few emails of non-resident parents begging to get their children into our programs. We're the only golf course that I know of, certainly in the greater Portland area, that offers a full day, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. golf program in the summertime. Of the total enrollment for those summer camps, we have 252 total kids. 153, or roughly 22 kids a week, are full day, so they're with us from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. And then I have 99 half-day campers, which is about 14 a week. So all in, we're about 36. Some camps have 40, some have a few less than 36. I'm not very good at saying no. So our max capacities are 32, and so our average is 4 over. And I've got a great staff of college and high school kids, mostly Greeley graduates or current Greeley students, that do a great job running those and helping me run those programs. That's all I have. Kind of the state of Valhalla, we're doing very well. Revenues, even though we've seen a lot of rain this spring, revenues seem very healthy. Very optimistic about the end to this fiscal year and really hopeful for next year as well. So that's all I'll say. And if you have any questions for me specifically after Toby says a few words, I'd be happy to answer.
All right, thanks, Nick. Thank you guys for having us. Like Nick said, we appreciate the opportunity to come and speak to you guys for a few minutes. So Nick kind of went over the business aspect. I'll just give you a rundown on where we're at on the golf course specifically. We had a very mild winter as far as how we gauge things. We didn't have to snow blow the greens once, which is fairly abnormal for us. I mean, as some of you may know, we cover about half of them with waterproof covers and insulation, and the other ones we tend to snow blow. We didn't have to pull the snow blowers out once this year. So winter was very mild. That kind of, lended itself to more opportunity to do things on the course. So my full-time guys were extremely busy out there doing tree work. We removed a bunch of invasive understory dead brush in between multiple holes in the front 9, which I think has been fairly well received by everybody. I mean, it not only is pleasing aesthetically, but it speeds up play, makes better playability. May is an extremely busy month for us. We're basically, coming out of winter, trying to get everything up and running. So, I mean, there's a lot of acreage that has to be overseeded, aerated, top dress, you name it. It's a lot of work. It's probably the busiest month of the season that we have as far as, the maintenance side of things goes. The irrigation system fared very well over winter. That's always a challenge, especially on years where you don't have a lot of snow cover and you have deep frost. We spent a little extra money last year and basically bought foam to insulate each of the individual heads, and we did that a long time ago. It worked well. For some reason, we stopped doing it. I think when we put this system in, the head design had changed, and you supposedly didn't need to, but that saved us a ton of work this spring. We had minimal breaks. The system's pretty much operational fully right now. We've got a few small kinks that we need to work out, but it's always good when we can start the year. We've got enough on our plate, let alone trying to maintain 14 miles of wire and 20 miles of pipe. So the new carts came in. It wasn't the smoothest transition, but those are there. It's nice. I think everybody likes them. All the GPS screens are finally in. So that, gives us kind of control on where carts can and cannot go. We only had that on a portion of the fleet prior to this, so it'll be nice having that. The bathroom we're constructing on the 6th hole should be done in the next week and a half. They'll be doing drywall and the exterior doors tomorrow, and then it should just be interior fixtures and exterior siding next week. We are almost fully staffed. I've just got 2 more high school kids that I'm waiting on, and it's just in time because as June gets here, and you guys probably know just based on your lawn, I mean, everything is growing full steam right now. So we're finally getting into our full mow schedule, as far as what needs to be done multiple times a week instead of just here and there as things grow. And Looking ahead, you know, I mean, it looks like the long-term forecast, next 4 weeks, everything looks good. There's no extreme, you know, warm temperatures, which is always good for us. Yeah, knock on wood. You know, we still plan for it. You know, I mean, basically May is set up for summer and June is kind of the start to summer. So we still monitor all of our, you know, soil moistures and everything very closely and make sure we're keeping up with all of our wetting agent applications, kind of build that reserve bank going into summer. And just keep the health as long as we can until we hit those really stressful months. But, you know, like Nick said, knock on wood, next 4 weeks look good. Doesn't look like any extreme temperatures. The ultra long range forecast for this summer also doesn't look terrible. You know, I mean, a lot of that our meteorologist bases on 40 years of analog data and weather models, and looks like quiet hurricane season. So, I mean, that tends to be a little better for us. Not that, you know, many has impacted us specifically or directly in the Northeast, but nevertheless, it helps. A little earlier start this year to thunderstorms than normal. We've already had a few fronts kind of roll through. We've had numerous opportunities already to use the Perry weather system, or I should say it used itself. It's fully autonomous. So the first one was probably about a month ago. I got a notice on my phone saying, you know, there was storm activity in the area, so I figured I'd go down to the golf course. We could kind of all watch it do its thing for the first time. And when I got there, Nick and I were talking and didn't think we'd get anything. You know, I mean, everything was kind of way out west or going to go south, and we hung out for about 25 minutes, and we had a random lightning bolt 1.2 miles that struck at Twin Brooks. And within 2-3 seconds, sirens went off. Everything worked as it should. So that was always good to see, you know. It's one of those things that you don't know if it works until it works, and you hope that it works. And it did. So it's done its job a couple times since then. Looks like it'll probably do its job, you know, as we get to the end of this week, and I'm sure even more as summer progresses. So I think that was a great investment. It saves a lot of time. The autonomy, you know, kind of takes more liability off kids if Nick and I aren't around and there's kids in the pro shop. So I'm excited to see it, you know, keep working throughout the season for sure. And then other than that, just looking ahead at, you know, capital stuff. We're due for new equipment. I think it's only a couple of years away, but lately we've been kind of getting into a trend where, you know, some of these companies are still kind of playing catch up from COVID, you know, as far as lack of production, and they're pretty much caught up. It just depends on what model or what specific piece of equipment you're looking for. So, you know, where we're 2 years away, the end of this year is basically when we'll sit down and start looking at like production forecasts, and like we have in the past, we may just have to put an order in even if we're not ready for it yet, so that when we are ready, we actually have it available. And then the irrigation system. I know that's come up a couple times, but, you know, that bond is up in a few years, I think. So we're gonna, you know, start this year and next basically doing more close or more in-depth audits of the system, kind of see where that's at. As I've mentioned, I think prior, you know, there is some main line out there that was from the system before. So while a lot of the pipe that's in the ground, the majority of it is, you know, 16, 17, 18 years old, there's pipe out there that's 35. So for the most part, again, knock on wood, everything seems to be doing its job. But yeah, we'll start doing the full audit and kind of get a better state of the union as this year progresses. So that's kind of where we're at. I don't know if you guys had any questions for Nick or I. Sure.
It's not really a question.
Okay.
And just a comment. During the budget process, when we went through everything, yours stood out because I thought it was really cool how you're spending money in the right places, doing things smarter as far as, like the monitoring of the soil, soil health, nutrients, all this stuff, moisture. This comment's kind of random. Yeah, basically it stood out to me as far as doing things smarter, being more efficient, cost savings, and just doing what you need rather than, doing the same old thing for no reason. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you. And, you can't really do the same old thing in our line of work. The weather is constantly changing, and there's all kinds of things in our environment that change. And you go down to the golf course, and which I invite all you to do at any point. I was talking to Councilor Eads earlier before this, and any of you who have never been, if you guys all want to come down and just kind of do a ride around, it's your golf course now. So we're more than happy to have you guys come down, do a ride around, show and tell, answer any questions you have. But, if you're down there, you notice, I mean, you know, there's a lot of topography changes, different aspects to the course. I mean, there's a million different microclimates out there. So, you know, I mean, we're constantly changing what we're doing in different areas of the course, and we just kind of extrapolate that over the whole program, you know. I mean, it's constantly evolving as the science evolves, and, you know, products and equipment that's available to us changes too. So try and stay on that cutting edge if we can.
Mike and then Andrew.
This is actually for both of you. When I first got on the council, and Ronnie was obviously there before me, every year in the budget, every year we would have 4 or 5 citizens show up and talk about the golf course and about it being in the red. Why do we do it? Why don't we privatize it? And for me, you know, it was always, well, the golf course is more than just the golf course. It's a recreation center year-round for people, and that was always the justification. But whatever you guys are doing is working, the two of you. You're in the black. All my friends, my buddy Chris is here tonight. All my friends golf, and the first thing I ask him is, how's the golf course? And it's Toby's doing a phenomenal job. How's Nick doing? He is running, his aspect of it is running, and it's great. So whatever you guys are doing, keep doing it. We appreciate you taking the pressure off of us. But this is probably we waited too long to have you guys come up, and I want you to know how much you guys actually have lives outside the golf course, busy lives, and but the amount of time and effort you spend doesn't go unnoticed up here. So I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart, both of you.
Thank you. We appreciate that. You know, and I would like to say, I mean, I've had multiple pros in my tenure there, and Nick's by far the easiest to get along with. I think he does a fantastic job. He's the first one to jump in the trenches with me, which his predecessors probably wouldn't have done. So no, I think we're fortunate to have the working relationship that we do have. You know, I'd like to thank you guys and the councils before you, because you have always supported us even when things weren't going where everybody wanted them to go. And you know, the other thing too is my staff. You know, I want to thank them. You know, as Nick said, get to showcase, you know, Toby's efforts on the course, but you know, my 3 full-time guys, Ian, Jason, Wade, I mean, there's almost 50 years of working knowledge on the course between them, and I'm thankful that I've got, you know, multiple seasonal guys that return year after year after year, and we finally have, you know, a good core group of people, and they come from all different types of backgrounds. So, you know, you put that many different avenues of education together, that's pretty much, it's not a lot that we can't do, but you know, you guys always support us. You always, you know, support what we're doing, whether it's approving or financially. But realistically, you know, my guys, they're the ones that are doing all of that hard work. So, you know, just as much praise should go to them. I couldn't do my job without them.
Thank you, Toby.
Yeah.
Andrew?
So I just have a quick question on like pest mitigation and how you sort of deal with that. I was out there this winter, you know, running with my dog, and sort of saw some, you know, older birdhouses that have seen better days. And those might have been replaced already, so I haven't been out there since like December. So, but in using, you know, birds, owls, whatever to get rid of, you know, rodents, insects, and all, versus, you know, using, you know, pharmaceutical, or not pharmaceutical, like chemicals and all, sort of what that balance is, and really that you're gonna need chemicals no matter what.
Yeah, I mean, we try and do, you know, everything we can before we resort to chemicals. So, I mean, there are definitely some aging birdhouses out there. We replace a few of them a year. We had somebody reach out asking if they could, you know, volunteer to make new ones, and I said absolutely. We've got bat houses that we've had out there. We've had a few duck houses in the pond. So, I mean, we do, you know, as much as we can before that, you know. And the hard thing with birdhouses specifically is you got to clean them and check them and, you know, make sure they're cleaned out when they are. So in the past, you know, we've gotten a lot of support from the public. We've had plenty of citizens that have helped us with, you know, cleaning those out, working on our pollinator gardens, documenting all the different species of, you know, whether it's wildlife, birds, plants, trees, whatever. So I think it's just continuing to find people like that to kind of give us help, you know what I mean? It tends to fall bottom of the list when we get to like busy season, so we do still have a couple people from, you know, the public that come down and help, and the help is always appreciated because it does make a difference. There are plenty of bats down there, I know that, I see them in the dark, so they're definitely helping with pest mitigation for sure.
Bob?
I would just echo Mike's comments too. I think that the operation down there is just really, really professionally run, and we couldn't ask for any better results. I did have a question, and that was, I think your people probably pay more attention to the land than anybody else, and particularly with, you know, pesticide use and fertilizers and things like that. Have you noticed any source of spruce budworm or woolly allergen in your, you know, woods out there?
I'm gonna say no. It's not to say that it's not out there. You know, we tend not to go like too deep into the woods just because they're a non-playable area. You know, if we were gonna see it, it'd be right along the tree line, you know, as it lines the holes, or in an area where we were working like last winter, thinning it out. But, you know, a lot of that work that Ian was doing was involving the grinder on the excavator from Public Works. So, you know, you're kind of watching too many things, I think, to look out for that. So I would say no, but then again, it's not to say it's not out there. We're just not actively looking for it.
I just want you guys to know that Bill Shane couldn't say enough good about the tour. Toby, he said you could grow grass on concrete.
Yeah.
So,
I always try. I mean, maybe not, but at least I'll try.
I'm not a golfer, but when I first got on the council, Bill Shane talked me into going golfing with him one day. It was Bill Shane, Bill Stiles, George Turner, and myself. And I have never, ever played golf in my life. I'd hit a few balls at a driving range. And I know nothing. I had no clubs or anything. Bill Shane says, "Here, take this club." I said, "Okay." He said, "See that down there? That's where you hit the ball." So I stood back, and I mean, I tried to kill the ball, and I hit it, and it goes right around the corner, and it lands down. I guess it was a perfect shot. I don't know. Bill Shane threw his golf club, and he says, "I'm done." He says, "This guy has never played golf, and he's hit the ball like that." At the end of the day, Bill Shane beat me by two strokes, and he says, "I will never play golf again." He says, "I'm done." He used a few adjectives, but I won't say them tonight. But it was a good time, and it really is a great facility, and I appreciate what you guys do, because you have turned the place around. I mean, in the time that I've spent here on the council, I've seen a lot of changes, and all for the better, so kudos to both of you, so.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions? No? Anyone from the public have any questions? Yeah, come on up.
Oh, boy. No.
Christopher Yale, 244 Greeley Road, Cumberland. So I might be a little biased because the back nine's my backyard. So it's all right there. I just wanted to come up and talk a little bit about these two gentlemen. And first time I played golf at Valhalla, I think was 1972 with my grandfather, when it was just the 9 holes in time. And I shagged balls for him, and we had the putting green out front, which used to be phenomenal. Anyway, so was a member in the 80s. I remember when the back nine was built and all the different things that the course has gone through. I'm so happy to be back there now. I'm so pleased to where I live and be able to see what these guys do. The place has never been this good. I mean, it is just in phenomenal shape for golfers and people that golf, and other people say that when they come down there from other courses. It is just in phenomenal shape. It's all about your greens, the trueness of them, and they're rolling a little fast. but it's just Toby's doing a phenomenal job out there. And I did hear some thunder Sunday afternoon, and there's a pole right out on the 13th behind my house, and I heard the siren go off about 3 minutes later. So I thought that was kind of cool. But well, that meant there was a lightning strike somewhere. But I heard the thunder. I didn't see the lightning. So I thought that was pretty cool. And it does take a lot of the pressure, because I talked to Nick about it last year, about him and Brad having to watch their phones and everything. And when you have the high school kids actually working the pro shop and stuff, and them trying to make the call, like watching the radar and everything like that. So I think that was a great investment. It is such an asset for the town. Like Nick talks about, and Toby, the high school kids and the kids they get to hire, and you're teaching them how to work, how to act around people and older people and stuff like that. Golf is a game of integrity, honesty, and etiquette. So you have to dress. You're supposed to dress a certain way and act a certain way. So it really teaches the younger kids. And I have some friends that actually work for Toby right now. One started as another Toby Bell. He was very high up in Bath Iron Works. Well, he retired, and now he's working there, and he loves it. And he said, both of them, Nick and Toby and Harrison, who he hired his son working there too, have said nothing but great things about working for Toby. And all the high school and college kids that work in the pro shop that we get to know and talk, working for Nick, are just great. So I think that's just something cool. I always love it when I see teenage kids and younger kids coming down the 12th fairway, which I'm on, and playing golf. So they're outside, they're doing activity, they're learning the game and learning stuff, and they're not inside looking at a screen. So I just think that's wonderful. Like he talked about, all his programs are full, which is great. The restaurant, Rachel's, I think does a great job. Even in the winter, if you try to go there on a trivia night Thursday, you got to get there early because it's packed and it's busy, and they do a good job. The food's good. So I can't say enough about the condition the place is in and how it's run, and Nick himself, how he runs the pro shop, how the sign up is on the computer. It's so easy for us members. We just had the memorial tournament. There were 60 guys that showed up for that tournament, for that morning, those 2 days. And we played in the rain, and with the weather that we've had, Toby's just done a phenomenal job on the course. So I might be a little biased, but I just want to let you guys know that these guys are it's just phenomenal. And the place is phenomenal they call it a public links, but we really got a great thing going here. And it's such a great asset to the town when people say, oh, do we really have to have a golf course? Yeah, it's an asset. It really is for the town, because it does so much other things for the town. And you talked about wildlife. When I played Sunday, going up the second, there were 2 deer right between the second and first hole. And when we were going up the 7th, there was a deer just off the corner, just, hi, how are you? As we play through. So it was pretty cool. So thank you. And, thank you guys.
Thank you. Mr. Magoon?
This might be a question more for Matt. During the budget season, we talked a little bit about the lightning monitoring system and all, and how that could be. I don't know if we really got into how that could be useful for I don't know, out of West Cumberland or Twin Brook. Is that something where it could be set up to have some sort of warning out at West Cumberland fields or at Twin Brooks, or both? I'm just thinking it'd be great to be able to know that if you have to get off of these giant open spaces, it's not just sort of waiting to hear thunder somewhere, but actually there's a legit thing going on there, and we got the science and sort of their point about it tells you lightning strikes are gonna hit. I'd rather we had the forewarning and all, but I don't know if that's sort of too large of a ask money-wise to implement something like that? Like if we need to have somebody monitoring it, or what that really entails?
Yeah, Toby may be able to answer that better than I can. I know last year when Julia Gagnon was performing over at the fairgrounds, I know we were in constant contact with Toby and his team because it was kind of dicey there, if you recall, one of the biggest thunderstorms we had, but had the confidence of the system to know that we were going to be safe. So Toby, if you wanted to speak about if we could.
Sure. So the whole system basically runs on a weather station that's mounted to the roof of the clubhouse. That's where all your sensors are. That's where the main horns are. And then out at Greeley Road, just based on distance from that, we have a secondary set of, like horns. That's the ones that out by Chris's house. Those are tied to the system through cellular, and they basically talk to each other. So it's almost a repeater for just the audible tone rather than a sensor itself. You have the ability to put them anywhere, So I think our original intent was to have the two we have, one at Twin Brooks, and I think West Cumberland was the other area that we talked about. They could all be tied into our weather station at the clubhouse because, even though it's quite a distance, I mean, when you're talking lightning, 20 miles is the difference of a mile or two in a 20-mile ring or a 25-mile ring is kind of negligible when you're talking about dealing with safety of kids, So you have the ability to add as many as you want. I say that, I think there may be a limit to like 20 per account, but they definitely can be added to multiple properties in town. They would all be tied into our account. We have the ability to add multiple users to it. So right now we have 10 of us on there with Nick and I basically listed as admin, and Pete Bingham from Rec is on there, Frank Smith from Twin Brooks is on there, Matt's on there, Chris Boldick, and my assistants, but you could keep adding them, and then either Nick or myself can set parameters based on the user group. So we have the ability to basically create a group that says coaches, and it only pertains to, like the coaches that would be using these specific things. So, they get notices that would pertain to them that might not pertain to the golf course or vice versa. And you can pick all of those parameters. So either it applies to everybody, it only applies to this field, only applies to this group, and that gets useful not just with lightning, but when you start talking like heat stress with kids, and wet bulb globe temperature and humidity and all of that stuff. I mean, if there's a big event going on down at Twin Brooks and nothing really going on at Valhalla, that may be something where if you've got, hundreds and hundreds of kids down there, that could be more of an important issue than the lightning thing. But yeah, long story short, the whole system is expandable. You can basically put them anywhere, and you can tie them to our existing account.
I'd just like to, if we can look into that and see what that entails cost-wise, maintenance-wise, et cetera, and all. I think that'd be good.
Sure.
Yeah, I think that'd be great, and we get plenty of time now to look at it between now and the next budget season, but we can come back for that for sure, Counselor.
I think we had looked at that last year as well, but one of the things we wanted to look at was having them on multiple sites, like as far as Broad Cove, right? Was like Broad Cove, Twin Brook, and West Cumberland, I don't think was part of the initial plan, and we realized kind of like if we want to do this, we should make sure there's kind of that equity across town for all of the areas that would really need to be informed. And at that point, I think it ended up being kind of cost prohibitive, but that is not to say that it's always going to be cost prohibitive, but at the time, that's kind of what the council's feeling was. And I totally agree that we should look at it for next year. But just some.
Does that mean we can upgrade the cell service on the Fort Side and out in West Cumberland, so we can actually like?
The nice thing with that system is it's actually tied into all major cell carriers, and it constantly picks the strongest signal. So even if it's changing every 10 seconds, it's grabbing the strongest signal. The other thing with just the horn stations, where you wouldn't need to put a weather station, down at Broad Cove specifically, they're all solar powered. So, I mean, it's got its own solar panel, battery, and a waterproof box. The light and the horns are all weather tight. So you also don't need any existing infrastructure as far as power or anything goes. You can pretty much just plug and play wherever.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I just want to say thank you as well. I know that we're talking a lot about golf, but you are my unsung hero for the pickleball courts. So thank you very much for that.
You're welcome. I don't have a lot to do with those, but you're welcome.
Well, whoever it is, please say thank you very much.
Sure.
Anyone else from the council of it? Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you both so much.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Happy Monday. Okie dokie, rockin' and rollin', 25058 to hold a public hearing to consider and act on the proposed Fourth Amendment to the Town of Cumberland's Municipal Development Tax Increment Financing District Number 1 and the development program for said district pursuant to the provisions of Chapter 206 of Title 30-A of the Maine Revised Statutes as amended. Just a heads up to folks, we did have a workshop from 5 to 7 p.m. with our ravishing town attorney, who is here with us tonight as well, if there are any residual questions. But she is ravishing, that's not up for discussion.
Madam Chair, report to HR at first thing tomorrow morning.
I was just gonna say.
Sorry, guys. Now I'm embarrassed. Sorry, Alyssa. Okay, so before we get into council discussion, is there anyone from the public who would like to comment on this agenda item? Okay, I will close public discussion then on this agenda item and move into council discussion unless there are any loose ends that either our ravishing town attorney or our ravishing town manager would like to hit with us. Okay, any ravishing town council members?
Just really trying to equitize that.
I am, I did a good job.
I feel seen. So.
Go for it, sir.
So I'm in hopes that any of the public who were concerned about this particular item tonight watched the workshop, because I think it really laid out the nuances of what the TIF district benefits is to the community, what the potential uses of that extension to that TIF district is. It really is. It's more than just providing some of the town manager's salary. It's more than just giving us the ability to fund economic development. It is really a broad-based tool that the state has given to us that we have used and capitalized on, and by extending this for another 10 years, it allows the town to position themselves for any number of public projects that have benefit that, if we were to fund them by bonds or other mechanisms, it probably wouldn't be so palatable. But by having a pool of money that's it's beneficial in more ways and I wish that we could just take that workshop and then turn it around in 3 minutes and put it out there. But it's not that easy to do. But anyways, I'm fully in favor of the extension. I'll leave it at that.
I just want to note, not to be pedantic, but you said 10 years, but just for people at home, it's a 20-year extension, not a 10-year extension. Just so we're all playing or singing from the same songbook. Other council comments? Mr. Kopp?
The long-running thing back when Bill Shane was manager, when this TIF was to expire, the date, we were going to write it behind the clock on the wall behind us because it was one of the most important dates that we needed to remember. And it truly is. And the discussion tonight was proof that it is very important to the public. So just wanted everybody to be aware that this has been on the agenda for a long time. So.
One question, clarifying question. So as part of the workshop, we talked about, whether or not we need to kind of have some consensus and or direction onto whether or not those funds would be directed towards transit or housing. So is that something that we want to talk about now? Sure. Okay. Anyone have an opinion on the matter?
I do.
Go ahead, Bob.
Get it, Bob.
I think we should leave it open-ended. I think we should, at the very minimum, provide direction that 75% or more be directed towards affordable housing. As Alyssa and the town manager both indicated, whatever we do is, we can modify at any time. So we're not locked into the percents of, we'll allocate 5% here and 10% there, or 20% here or there. The options are open to us, so we can, I think it's best just to leave it at 75% and as the manager directs. Have I got that right?
I thought for the purposes of the application, we had to delineate one or the
We
other.
do. Let's see, may want to jump in on that.
But let's ask our town attorney, who remains ravishing, whether or not she has an opinion on this subject. Really good at beating a
I've
dead
never had
horse.
this kind of reception at a council meeting. I don't know how to respond. So you have to designate a minimum of 75%, currently either towards affordable housing or transit. So it'd be great to get a direction just on one of those. We can reserve the discretion to alternate those if the statute allows, and I've got a sense that the council may like to do that. And then we need to allocate the remaining 25% among the other project costs. So really the direction from the council tonight would be, I guess the question I would pose to you is, of the list that was presented in Exhibit J, I think the first question is everyone in favor of maintaining that list as presented, or is there anything you want to take off of that list? There isn't anything else to add. It's all inclusive as to what the options are. So if you're in favor of everything that's on Exhibit J, then I think the approach would be identifying whether the 75% priority is affordable housing or transit. And then from there, the last question is, how do you want to allocate the 25%? You can delegate to the manager to apportion that equally. You can do it as a council, however you'd like to do that tonight. But that's sort of, I guess, I think how I would recommend approaching the project list.
Thank you.
And just a reminder, point of order, that there has to be a public hearing tonight as well on this item.
I think I did
Yeah.
I opened and closed the public hearing.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you did.
Yep, first thing, yep.
I didn't hear it, sorry. I can talk louder too.
No, I might have just missed you.
No, you would never. Denise?
If we're talking housing versus transit, I would take housing. Totally. I mean, I feel like there's a
Second.
lot more we can do with 75% of captured value with housing rather than transit, especially since, transit for what is kind of my thing. But, so is that a question that I am posing now? Like, who's in favor of housing over transit? General feelings?
Housing for me.
I'd say housing.
Michael Eads. Housing, transit, preference?
Housing.
Thumbs up from Ron.
Housing.
All right.
I am in favor of housing. However, I think at some point we were hoping to have some folks in to come and talk to us about transit as well, which I think just from a learning opportunity, I would like to have that exercise. I don't know if there's other consensus, but even around, if eventually we get a roundabout and there's more kind of travel between the communities, and if there was like a shuttle bus or things like that, I would just love to know what those options are. But it looks like Ron had something to say.
If I read the motion, does it have to say housing or transit tonight?
The motion doesn't specifically, but the program that you're adopting by reference of the motion should include that. So really, right now, those allocations are blank, and we're just looking for the council to give some direction so that when we submit it to DECD, what you've approved in that motion incorporates it in the application materials. So we can fill that in based on whatever feedback you provide tonight.
Okay.
Yep.
And I should have asked this question as part, so that this could have been gathered and presented tonight, but as far as the options in the list that I had mentioned were most attractive during the workshop, which was some sort of economic development consultant or something, water, broadband, sewer, public safety. I'm curious how much of the public safety and the water, sewer is already covered from another district, if that's allocated elsewhere, to where instead, let's just like leave that for something else and instead focus on something else. Like, could we even have affordable housing as 75, but then have transit as something smaller in case we wanted to like run a bus line that doesn't warrant 75% of the captured value, but it's still something we would want to consider.
Councilor Thorson, to your question, I think, you're going to have the 75% set aside, but on an annual basis, the council will look at this and decide how you want to allocate your TIF funding. So much as we did this past year, it was just like we would show what positions were paid for, what capital projects were going forward. So on an annual basis, council could look at that and say, well, we want to allocate this amount to this project. And so I think ultimately the final say is with the council. So you can make those decisions as you go forward. I might come forward, or the manager might come forward with a recommendation to say, well, this is our economic development program for the year going forward, and you can say, well, we like that, or scrap that. This year we need to throttle the throttle TIF 1 back because the school bond might be coming on, or the town has other financial liabilities that it needs to address. So ultimately, it comes down to the council on an annual basis, looking at that and saying, this is how we want to allocate the funds out of the program this year. So I think you look at that year over year, and you could prioritize as you need, or you could look at that and say, okay, 3 years from now, 5 years from now, we want to put water line up Bruce Hill. So let's set aside X amount of dollars per year for the next 5 years. Like when we were talking about capital planning with Helene this spring, and just saying we're going to set aside X amount of dollars per year out of these TIF funds to fund that water line. So you have a lot of those. It's part of our responsibility as staff to come forward with some projects that meet the design of what the council wants to set for the direction of the town. So I think working together we can find those answers.
So for the purposes of the application where we have to allocate percentages for particular project categories, is that something where you or someone would need to take a look at the rest of the districts to see where we have gaps and then determine it in that way?
I think we'd probably look at that and make our recommendations accordingly.
Okay.
And then probably with the remaining 25%, as Attorney Tibbetts said, if you left it to the discretion of the manager to come forward with a recommendation, ultimately it's just a recommendation to the council. Council could then say, well, this year we want to use 5% towards economic development. Next year might not be the same. So instead of codifying it within the project list, you may be better served by not allocating a certain percentage to each different area and just having that wide band that you can use to use your discretion as well.
Okay.
Yeah, I think coming off of that, Denise, I think I would be in favor of approving and then having Matt come back with a suggestion, just because I think it would be in our best interest to really understand the full scope of other TIF funds and where they're being allocated before we make a decision, knowing that it can change, but I think it would be the best foot forward.
I would agree. I think that a lot of our needs do change, right? What did we just reallocate this year? We had money earmarked for one project, and then we ended up using it for the Range Road shaving down the hill, right?
Yeah, it was the Route 1 turning lane down on Route 1, and then with that project not coming together, then it freed up money. And then also this year with the replacement of the Tuttle Road Bridge. Originally there was $700,000 that was set aside in the TIF fund for that, and it turned up being to $22,000 this year. So things change. So you need to have that flexibility to reallocate and meet the needs as there's some needs that you don't know that are going to present themselves, and there are others that you can plan ahead and accomplish them.
Any other council discussion?
I give you a motion.
More, but I was gonna wait in case someone else wanted to talk.
If you have something to say, Councilor Thorson, go for it.
It was just a small rehash of what was discussed in the workshop in case you don't want to watch it, which if you do, I recommend just putting it on 2 times speed and just like trying to absorb as much as you can, because I find that is just as effective as watching 2 hours. A little tidbit about something I had mentioned, if this goes forward, which I believe it is, meeting at a later time, whether it's the TIF committee or the council as a whole, or, you know, however we want to do that, and creating an SOP for how we want to determine whether or not we're throttling year to year in TIF districts, this one and any others that we eventually, or, you know, we want to change to be throttleable. And by that, I mean not capturing all the value of the district in a given year, but allocating a certain percentage to go to the general fund for other things, and when we should consider throttling and when we should not. And then baking into the budget process kind of why we arrived at that, what it's used for in that case, what the rationale was, and which criteria we used to arrive at that decision. So it's transparent and it's something that is easily explained, and it is tied to a goal or a specific project or a specific need in the community where we would need to shift some money to the general fund for other uses. So that was all. And that sounds like fun, so I want to be a part of that. Whatever committee I need to join to do that, I'll do it.
I think that would also be a great thing we could do with Helene.
Yeah.
Right, as well, or bring Helene into the fray and codify that. Maybe at a finance, or, yeah, anyway. At a finance, or probably just at a council meeting.
Yeah.
Any other discussion on this? Thank you for that thoughtful recap, Councilor Thorson. If there was a motion, I would take one.
Madam Chair, I move to adopt the order as included with the meeting packet materials.
I'll give you a second.
There's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the motion? Mr. Vail.
Should we include the 75% allocated to housing and 25%, remaining 25% as the manager shall suggest?
We are getting a nod from our ravishing town attorney, so it sounds like maybe we should slightly amend the.
With 75% towards housing and 25% towards transit.
I'll give you a second.
Is there any discussion on the motion?
So I'd say that 75% towards housing and then 25% as recommended. Instead of specific to transit, have it as recommended for the other, however many there were, 15, 20 different options.
Okay, I understood that we could change it, but if you want it, I mean.
Let's do that. if we can.
Okay. As recommended.
You can change it for the 75%. It's just the remaining 25% to add the discretion for the manager to make that recommendation. So the 75%, the priority would be housing, to be determined in the future as to transit for the council, and then the 25% to be recommended by the manager is how I'm hearing it, just to clarify.
Let me rephrase that.
It's your last meeting. Last time you have to do it.
Madam Chair, I move to adopt the order as included with the meeting packet material, applying 75% towards housing and 25% as the town manager sees fit.
Ronald, I'll give you a second.
Keep my scorecard clean.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the motion?
Not anymore.
Very good. Call for a vote. All those in favor? Unanimous, Brenda.
Thanks, Alyssa.
That was fun. Thanks so much, Alyssa. Thanks, Matt, and for Whitney, all the hard work on this. We appreciate it, as well as from all the comments from folks at home. And we will, if you like, include your comments and emails in the public record. Okay, next up, we have 25-059 to hold a public hearing to consider and act on a liquor license renewal for the Cumberland House of Pizza. So this is a public hearing, but just a heads up to any folks that are here and any folks that are watching at home. This is an annual renewal. There are no concerns from the fire chief, the code enforcement officer, or the police chief on this. I will open up the public hearing. Is there anyone from the public that would like to come talk about a liquor license renewal? Not this evening. Okay, I will close the public hearing and open it up to council discussion.
Fried mushrooms are really good.
And if they weren't, would you not allow them to have a license?
I have to say, Andrew, I know that you've been really advocating for the type in application format, and this makes it very easy.
It's lovely.
Only one thing I noticed that was somewhat challenging to understand was question number 3, but then I realized that it was yes to their second from question number 2. I have no issues with this application otherwise, and would provide a motion if there's no other discussion.
I think it's a great business, and I'd like to support them personally, and I have no issues with this application either.
Yeah.
Any other council discussion?
This was a new owner last year, and now they've been with us a whole year, and they have received no complaints, so
Job well done.
job well done.
No one else?
Any other discussion? Okay, we'll take a motion if there is one.
I'll give you a motion. I move to approve the liquor license renewal for Cumberland House of Pizza.
I'll second.
Okay, there's a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Call for a vote. All those in favor?
Abstain.
Okay, 6 yes, 6 yes, 1 abstention. Brenda, thank you very much. Okay, next up, we have 25-060 to hold a public hearing to consider and act on a mass gathering application for the Cumberland Soccer Club Just for Fun tournament to be held on August 30th and 31st at Twinbrook Recreation Area. Okay, this is also, I believe, an annual mass gathering. Per application, not permit, I guess. I will note that there are 4 food trucks, so maybe Councilor Vale shouldn't go to Twinbrook that day if we approve this.
You took my zinger.
And we'll,
Bob, I'm gonna buy you a
You're
food
never
truck
gonna
for
live it
Christmas.
down.
We should buy him one.
He's gonna open his own food truck.
and we'll
And a
also,
beer truck.
Beer truck.
and we will also note that there will be some police coverage, and that they've coordinated with the recreation, as well as some fire rescue coverage. I imagine that's for EMTs in case there are any issues.
You are correct, Madam Chair. Trying to pregame that well in advance now, especially because we've had changes in both collective bargaining agreements that change the rates, so we wanted to do early outreach on that, so folks are well informed and we align the coverage with what their needs are.
Excellent. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone from the public that would like to comment on this? Okay, I will close the hearing about the Just for Fun tournament.
Andrew, are you gonna
Mr.
talk
Kopp?
about your?
Just a question, should the name of the food trucks be on the application? And I mean,
I think they're okay, because I don't know if they know exactly which 4 they're gonna be at this time.
okay, but I mean, obviously, somebody will make sure that they're licensed, I mean, and all of that. That's what I'm getting at, I guess, so.
Yeah,
I'm just looking out for you, Bob.
I'll be down there inspecting.
I'm sure you will.
Quality control.
Madam Chair, I'll give you a motion when you're ready.
I am ready.
Madam Chair, I move to approve the mass gathering application for the Cumberland Soccer Club Just for Fun tournament to be held on August 30th and 31st at Twinbrook Recreation Area.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor? Unanimous, Brenda. Okay. Next up, we have 25-061 to authorize the town manager to accept payment for delinquent taxes in the amount of $500 for tax year 2023 on property identified as tax map RO2, lot 10. Yes, Mr. Vail?
Madam Chair, I would like to table this item tonight. Three of us are privy to information about this piece of property that I think might be better served by an executive session at some point, and I think that to act on this tonight would be premature.
Okay.
Do
I
you need a motion for that?
I would be happy to make one.
I'm privy to the information as well, so I would feel comfortable with that as well.
I would move to table this item, 25-060.
okay, before we,
061.
yep, and I think that,
Hasn't been seconded, so.
just because I think there's no longer any discussion allowed after you you do the motion to table, so before you,
Hasn't been seconded, so it's.
okay, so before we make our motion, is there any discussion about this before that motion goes forward?
I think Ron was just correcting that it's 25-61.
So 61, not 060.
Oh, sorry.
Perfect opportunity. Go for it.
Now we're ready. All right. I would move to table item 25061.
I'll give you a second.
Motion and a second.
No discussion.
All those in favor? Unanimous, Brenda. Great.
Madam Chair, on a point of order, just to the council, would you like me to have this as part of an executive session? We have one that we'll schedule for the 16th, so we'll add this as an item as well. Just make sure we have the chapter and verse correct to make sure. But perfect, thank you. We'll do that. We'll have it ready for the next meeting.
Perfect. On the other point of order, sorry, since it's tabled, there has to be a motion to take it off the table. Does that happen prior to going into executive session because you're not allowed to take any action during executive session?
After.
No, you can,
Talk about it?
we can put something on afterwards.
Yep.
And if the council so decides, so we can have executive session and then have that final action from there. So then you can look at that and say, you know, you can take it, or you can decide not to take it off the table at that point. But generally, you'll have that for action at the next meeting. So we can have that as a subsequent event after the exec session to give the council the ability to act if you so choose.
Awesome sauce, thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
Okay, then it's new business time. Mr. Eads.
Just the same thing, Ronnie, thank you. Matt, thanks. I've never looked back after we hired you. It's been a good year, thanks.
Thank you, sir. It's been a
Coming
great
on
year.
board.
That's right, Mike.
One quick thing, I got a message from Tony Kluge, one of the police officers here in town. They're doing their Special Olympics torch run on Wednesday. If anybody in town would like to donate, you can donate directly to the police department. 100% of it goes to Special Olympics. Right now, Tony's the #1 in individual fundraising in the state, and Cumberland PD's #2 as a team. I'd like to see us bring it up to #1. So, anyways, anybody wants to donate, contact the police department. It's a great cause. So that's all I have, Madam Chair.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Counselor Magoon?
All I have is the LCC is meeting this Wednesday at 7 p.m. Right here in the council chambers.
Thank you, sir. Counselor Douglas?
Just thanks to Ron. Can't believe you're leaving us again. It's very sad. Appreciated your time here. I'll be seeing you soon.
Yeah.
What?
Is that a threat?
Well, I mean, it's like a second funeral. It's like I'm just not here for it. You know?
I'm not dead yet.
Counselor Vail?
Two things. The town manager and I went to St. Joseph's College last Thursday for Greater Portland Council of Governments year-end extravaganza, and had an opportunity to listened to a number of people from different communities and how they were collaborating, how they were you could tell that people were aware that taxes are too high, and that was, that was right across the board. There was nobody said they had lots of extra money, and I think when I looked around the room, Cumberland was in a much better position than a lot of the other communities as far as tax increases and being able to move programs and things forward. So that I'm really proud of. Anyways, it was time well spent. I serve on the Cumberland County Finance Committee, and as part of that, we hear presentations from the District Attorney's Office, from the Cumberland County Civic Center, from Dispatch, and the Sheriff's Department. And they all make great presentations, but one of the things that hit home with me recently, and in reflecting back over the last 6 months, was a presentation by the sheriff. And, he talked about, that they haven't been able to take federal prisoners over the last couple of 3 years, one of which was COVID, and some conditions that had to be, some upgrades that had to be made at the jail. And the other thing that was impressed upon me was that taking federal prisoners is a cash revenue source for the county. But more importantly, I don't know if anybody had a chance to read Saturday's paper, and I had been meaning to reach out to the sheriff over the past couple of weeks because I wanted to express to him that, my support for what he's doing. And, all too often we're hearing criticism by police departments and, people who are, don't want us to be involved with the, federal enforcement of immigration and things like that. But the thing that, and I did write the sheriff, and I received a letter back from him also. It's so important that people who are arrested for whatever, whether it's shoplifting, traffic violations, or if you end up in the county lockup, you're home in some sense. You have access to people that legal representation, and the idea that that the county would stop this process, stop this program, and not take federal prisoners is thankfully it was something that's shared by the sheriff and myself, is that they will continue to take federal prisoners. I think that if we look out at the landscape and what's going on in this country today, it's so important that we maintain local control. And I applaud the sheriff's efforts, and I think that he's doing a great job in spite of a lot of pushback. That's all I got.
Thank you, sir. Councilor Thorson?
On Friday, it was super cool at the Orchard because I showed up at like 9 a.m. hanging out with Jesse and Adam from the Orchard Subcommittee and waiting for a bunch of kids to show up. And then they arrived like a horde down the road, or like hundreds of them walking. And you could hear them screaming. They were so excited to be out of the classroom and come and hang out with us. And it was just the coolest thing ever. They came in sets, like 2 sets. It was a total, I think, of like 200 kids, maybe 180. And they had little cups of sand that were mixed with wildflower seeds and other seeds to help basically keep the knapweed down in the rows between the orchard over on Stiles Way. And Jesse gave a presentation of why we are doing this, what this orchard is, what a public orchard is, what a free-to-pick orchard is, what food independence is, pollination, which the kids knew a lot of this already. They were able to answer his questions. And then went around to the different rows of the orchard, just like set them loose, and they just sprinkled their sand seed mixture all over the place. And it was really cool. And I know they didn't volunteer. They were forced to go there because it was a field trip. But they definitely had fun, and I think that this entire 4th grade class has kind of just understood what volunteerism is and being in your local community and helping something grow. And the trees are looking great, by the way. Like, only 2 of them died over the last year, and pretty much were just left alone for the winter. They've got, some of them already have apple blossoms. They're branching out well, done really well. So, you know, handful of years from now, they will have fruit, and we can all go. The community can coalesce upon the orchard, pick their peaches and plums and pears and apples for free, and whatever else we can just donate to the food pantry or do something with it. There's also a beehive there now. I think Mr. Bill Stiles donated it, or I mean, didn't donate it, but it's there. So the bees are happy. They're helping pollinate the trees. Wildflower gardens going. Everything's great. So anyone can head down there and check it out. Next time you drop off your brush at the brush dump, just go over to that little red shed and walk around and look at the trees, see how they're doing. Enjoy it. And remember how tiny they are now, because they will not be that small forever. Additionally, go vote. That's a thing. And one question on the ballot that's kind of important and worth considering and learning more about is every 3 years we have to reaffirm that we want to like validate or approve or disapprove the school budget on the ballot, rather than with a show of hands or whatever at a school board meeting. And I don't want to endorse how you should vote either way, but I will say that having it on the ballot, there's a lot more opportunity for people to vote on it, you know, like thousands of residents, rather than people having to go show up at a school board meeting on a designated night and raise your hand. With absentee voting, we have a lot more opportunities to vote in that way. So that's a thing. That's on the ballot. We get the opportunity to do that every 3 years. So if nothing else, there's that. You can go vote on that. And, you know, Ron's replacement. Yeah.
No one could ever replace Ron. Mr. Kopp, Councilor Kopp.
A few things. Bill and Linda Shane left Cumberland today
What?
in 2 separate vehicles driving to South Carolina. And if I know Linda, she probably cried all the way to the state line. Bill called me Saturday and wanted to know if I could arrange for somebody to haul her vehicle because he was afraid she wouldn't be able to drive. She ponied up and she did drive off, but they are on their way to South Carolina, and I wish them the best of luck. Thank you guys all for the generous donation to the food pantry. Very special, very important. I have donated to that food pantry ever since I've been on the town council. I think it's a wonderful cause. I don't want anybody in this town to forget the needy, because they are important. No counselor sits up here for the money. We all sit up here because we have a genuine interest in what goes on in this town. It's not about anything other than you truly care about where you live. All of us, every one of us. Not one more than the other, but all of us equal. I'm going to donate to the food pantry again, and I will donate another $20 to the Special Olympics, Mike, so. And I truly have enjoyed the 18 and a half years that I've sat up here. I owe my wife a lot of thanks. I'm no genius when it comes to the computer or the iPad. My wife is the one that sets it up or tells me that the battery's dead, or I need to call Brenda. Or have you read your packet? Do you know what's going on tonight? Yes, honey, I read the packet. I'm up to speed. She's shaking her head no, but thank you very much for the 18 and a half years of support. So now you're going to have to put up with me every Monday night or every other Monday night, I guess. But truly, thank you all. Appreciate it. That's all I have.
Thank you, Ron. Just a couple things. On June 14th, we have at 4 p.m., if you're available and if anyone in the public wants to come down, a crosswalk dedication at 4 o'clock. Just come hang out by the monument, and there will be treats and fun. On June 16th, we are going to do our council caucus at 5 p.m. so folks can throw their hat in the ring for different positions of leadership on the council. We can talk about committee assignments and all of that good stuff to make sure that we're in good shape. And then one thing, I love home rule on almost everything, but there is a new bill in the legislature that has some very exciting ground, LD 1655, which possibly says that municipalities shall not be able to restrict the number of chickens on someone's plot. Very excited about this.
Just feel self-serving.
Giving you all a heads up. And finally, obviously, we have an election next week, and every council has a different flavor. And I know, of course, Ron, you are stepping away, and we may have new people in seats. We'll have definitely one new person in a seat, but it has just been such a privilege to serve with all of you. I have learned so much from all of you, every single one of you, and I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you, because this has been a great year. That's it for me. Sorry. I'd take it a motion to adjourn, or we can stay up here forever. So moved. Ron?
So moved.
Is there a second from Miss? Okay.
Second.
All those in favor? Unanimous, Brenda. Oh, and happy anniversary, Matt. Sorry.
Thank you.
Mike told me